Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the November 5th, 2013 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. We have a jam-packed meeting tonight, ladies and gentlemen. As they say in other venues, there are seats over on this side. Move to the front of the car. There's plenty of seats available. We invite you to sit down and enjoy our meeting. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. If you haven't already picked one up, please feel free to do so and follow along with our procedure tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our agenda tonight, as well as a segment of our meeting for public comments of a general nature with respect to matters not appearing on tonight's agenda. And I will emphasize that because I suspect that many of you are here to speak during that segment of the meeting. So fair notice in advance, that would be item 4, public comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on tonight's agenda. If it's a matter that is appearing on our agenda tonight, there will be a particular segment in which I will invite any members of the public to ask any questions or make any comments at that time. It is customary for us to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So for those of you who are not already standing, please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. It's not often that we get a choir like that, so I appreciate it. And at this point in time, I would ask our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson? Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin? Here. Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. And speaking of Commissioner Olson, who is joining us electronically tonight because he is out of town, the first order of business that we need to take up is a motion to allow Commissioner Olson to participate in the Village Council meeting tonight by telephone. So I would ask for said motion, please.
Mayor, I move to allow Commissioner Olson to participate in the Village Council meeting of November 5th, 2013 by telephone.
Second.
Any questions or comments from anyone? Members of the public or the council? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, Commissioner Olson. You will be allowed to participate in the balance of the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
And we will be deferring all responses to all questions from anyone in the audience to you tonight, so I want you to be prepared for that.
Sounds good.
Just kidding. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes from our regular council meeting on October 15th, 2013. Are there any changes, corrections, comments with respect to those minutes? Any changes to the minutes, Commissioner Olson?
None from me, thank you, Mayor.
All right, then in that case, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are adopted. And just like that, we are at segment 4 on our agenda. This is the segment of our meeting that is devoted to public comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not appearing on our agenda tonight. If any members of the audience have any questions or comments of a general nature, the protocol is to please come down to the podium, give us your name and address, and we would welcome hearing from you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Tully, council members, Mr. Fieldman, all the staff. I'm David Maish, live at 3707 Douglas Road in Downers Grove. My comments concern last month's meeting when SSA ordinance for the establishment of SSA number 6 was put on the agenda. I understand that Mr. Fieldman had been working with the members of the Fairview Fire Protection District Board to clarify some of the language, and they have accomplished that. So I'd like to thank Mr. Fieldman and his staff for clarifying that for us. It will make a lot of people quite happy because we were concerned about some of the numbers there which didn't seem to make sense to us. Now, the language clarifying the levy, from what I read, has not changed the ordinance itself or the application of the ordinance. So can I assume that this will not have to be resubmitted and it is still on track for final implementation around December 14th or soon after?
I believe that timing is correct, but I will defer to staff to confirm.
That is correct. A first reading on this item on December 10th and up for a vote on December 17th.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. And one more question, don't mean it to sound antagonistic or anything like that, but the question is for Mr. Fieldman. When the village decides to raise this levy to the maximum allowed, will the members of the SSA number 6, the owners, have input on the change of the levy? Or will it be a swipe of the pen and a vote?
It's far from a swipe of the pen and a vote. In fact, there are many meetings on the proposed tax levies, and in fact, on tonight's agenda is the first of a series of 4 meetings to consider all levies, including special service areas. So it's open to the public, and this mayor and council and the ones to come will always take public input and consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. You folks have answered my question, and once again, thanks for working with the Fairview Fire Protection District to establish SSA number 6.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments, and thank you for coming down again. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Questions or comments on a general nature with respect to items not appearing on tonight's agenda? Good evening.
My name is Casey Stachiva. I am at 1836 Sturbridge Place, Downers Grove, Illinois. I am a Downers Grove resident that, like every resident, was subjected to the stormwater fee. I'd just like to pass this out to the commissioners. It's an aerial view that I received as a Downers Grove resident who objected and requested appeal. In essence, what I'd like you to see once you get copies of that, there's only copies for the commissioner and the mayor. I didn't make enough copies. The things that I'd like to point out in the aerial photos are some things. Now, this aerial photo was given to me by David Fieldman because I requested inaccurate data. And as you can clearly see, the aerial photo shows my house, my garage, my driveway, the sidewalk, and a deck. If you clearly look at the photo, you're going to notice something tremendously wrong with the photo. One, it's outlined in red what is considered impervious area. If you look at the house, the red square is almost 7 to 10 feet off of the house, but yet I'm charged 1,750 square feet for that area. Second, if you look at the deck at the back, it is totally surrounded by trees, but yet this aerial photo tells that my deck is a rectangle at 377 square feet, which according to my legal survey is 2 squares touching each other on corners, so it is not of any nature of that. The third one that you would have to use my survey is the actual outline of the driveway. It's showing 621 square feet. According to my survey, it was nowhere near that square footage. The only accurate square footage on this survey, or this aerial photo, is the actual sidewalk, which is 107 square feet. In essence, this is used to determine what tier a Downers Grove resident will be put into. Okay? I appealed my case to the Stormwater Commission. Okay? I brought all of my documentation with me. Okay? In essence, they came up with even more square footage from my survey, which is totally incorrect. In essence, the stormwater administrator, which was there at the meeting, basically came up and said, we're also going to have to charge you for eaves. Well, unfortunately, with your aerial photo, how could you charge me for eaves? For one thing, on my survey, there is no documentation regarding eaves, okay? So I was charged anywhere from 3 to 4 feet of eave surface area for my roof, which she tells me it's in Chapter 25 of our municipal code, which I searched thoroughly before I came to this meeting, and the only eaves that it talks about is what is considered accountable for impervious area. But if you have no correct square footage or correct dimensions, how could you charge me for that? So in essence, they denied my appeal. I essentially remains in Tier 2. Essentially, I met with the mayor let's see here. I met with the mayor in
Several
July.
times.
And basically, myself and another resident who was at this appeal meeting explained to the mayor our situation. And the mayor seemed like he was interested in resolving our issues and our complaints, and this was totally an unfair process. We understand that you're taking our tax dollars and making a fee. Most of us don't agree with that, okay? We believe that the stormwater fee is nothing that should occur. You've got our tax dollars. DuPage County is the highest paid taxes in the state, and you should be using that tax dollar. Okay, so in essence, when I met with the mayor and the mayor said he would look into the matter, it wasn't until probably the third meeting in October that the mayor finally got back to me with some email. He talked to me about preponderance of evidence that I had to prove. Well, I had my survey, okay? I have your aerial photo, okay? I basically was informed by your stormwater administrator that there is calculations in Chapter 25 of the Municipal Code regarding eaves when there is no such thing. At this meeting, we were sworn in and were told that we had to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But as you can see, I'm bringing up things that concern me tremendously. Okay, and I know I'm here, but I'm also here for my Divine Savior Parish because I don't believe churches should be paying this. But also, too, I
If I can
believe...
interrupt you, sir, folks, please, I would ask that, like in your organizations, if you could please respect our decorum, and I would ask that you please refrain from applauding. We're going to be here all night, and it's going to really limit the ability for people to speak. And I think out of respect for one another and the decorum of our institution here, as you are guests in our home, as you would expect us when we are guests in your home, if you could please refrain from applauding or calling out or things of that nature. I'm sure there are going to be things that everyone's going to hear tonight that they approve of, and I'm also sure there's going to be things you hear tonight you're not going to approve of. And I think some of you in this audience are going to have differences of opinions on things, and I'd like to think that all of us can respect one another's views and follow the decorum in a civilized manner tonight, so I would ask you please do that throughout the course of tonight's evening. Thank you. Please, sir, continue.
Okay. I just
Oh,
like
and
to...
by the way, we normally ask for 5 minutes or less for public comments, but since I interrupted you, please go ahead.
Okay. And the other things that I want to mention is that a Downers Grove resident will never receive this unless they request appeal through the village manager. And that is wrong. Because if they did see this, I'm sure there will be more appeals regarding the stormwater charges because they're incorrect. I know they are. And in essence, I'd just like to say, in talking with the mayor, to put in additional chapters regarding creeks and everything, according to your email, didn't help me out. What it basically did was close the door at saying, forget about appealing, we're going to take that money from you no matter what. And I think that's wrong, because we have one thing that we have a vote, okay, and we're going to remember, okay, and understand that. We're not in agreement with this, and two, we want it to be fair. I don't have any problems of paying my share, but I don't want to pay more than my share in a corrupt process, okay? And if you're going to go with square footage, then you need to be accurate, okay? And I can prove to you with my survey, I have it here, okay, of all the square footage that I ever talked about. But I never put in my square footages of eaves because a survey doesn't have it, and I don't mention things in Chapter 25 that don't exist, okay? And that is your stormwater administrator, okay? That's how they're handling the situation. When I went to the committee, oversight committee members, they're all volunteers. They had no clue of how to handle the situation of an appeal. And yet we're forced into this? It's wrong, okay? And as a Downers Grove resident, I would like something changed. I'm not stopping here, okay? I'm going to go further with this. If I have to go to the Attorney Generals of the state of Illinois to get an investigation, I will, okay? Because something has to change, something has to be corrected. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. And as you know, you and I have spoken for hours on this topic, and you've shown me the drawings, and I believe this is actually available on our website for anyone who would like it. So it's not true to say that you have to go to the
It's not conveyed in any of your letters that you...
Sir, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I've been very patient. I I let you speak your piece. I'll let you say something when I'm done. But I'd now like to address the 4 or 5 points that you made. Because you and I have discussed this at great length on multiple occasions, and you've probably had more discussion and interaction with the village about this issue than just about anybody else that I know of. And you did go through an appeal process. There is an appeal for it, and there was even a further appeal process that you could have taken upon yourself as well. But just so everyone understands what we're talking about here, we have multiple tiers for residential units. There's tier 1, there's tier 2, and tier 3. What is issue here is whether this gentleman should be in tier 1 or tier 2. Looking at this photo, which is, by the way, available on the village website, anybody can click on this map and get this exact picture anytime they would like for your own home. So for anyone who is interested in looking it up, you're able to do that right now, and I would encourage you to go ahead and do it because it's a public document. Nobody is withholding this from anyone. What it is an aerial photo, and the information that's used, I believe, comes from the county, and it's used to give a rough idea of what the size of the impervious area is, impermeable area for a property. It is not perfect, but here's the point. It's sort of like your taxes. If you make $1 more a year, that's not necessarily going to put you into the next category. If you make $1 less a year, it's not necessarily going to put you into a different category. There are ranges. So the tier 1 goes up to 2,500 square feet of impermeable area. And based on this drawing, sir, I believe you are at 2855. So in order to go into a lower tier, you would have to knock off 355 square feet. And as you and I have discussed over and over again, even if all the things you're saying are true, it doesn't get you into a lower tier. And I understand that you object to that. I understand that you would like the ordinance to be changed. I understand that you would like different information used to do the calculation. I understand that you would like, and I'm not here to argue with this, sir. I'm just simply pointing out things that we've discussed so that the audience has a fuller appreciation of what, in all fairness, has been going on for some time now. And I did ask, I think last time, for you to send me your survey, and you didn't send it to me. So if you would send it to me, I'd be happy to look at it and see if it brings me to a different conclusion. But as I added these numbers, you're almost 400 square feet over tier 1. So even if you're off 10 feet or 20 feet or even 100 feet, it still doesn't get you into a lower tier. So it's not as you're being overcharged. I understand that what you would like is to have a wholesale change in the ordinance, and I agree that did not happen. It was clarified, what was always there to begin with, is that eaves were included. I understand that was the basis, one of the bases of your appeals. You wanted your eaves out. That's not the way the ordinance is. There are lots of ordinances that people disagree with. There's some I disagree with, but the ordinance is the ordinance, and it's being applied to you no different than anybody else. Now, if your survey shows me some different information than what I've seen, I've asked you and invited you to send it to me. Please do. I'd be happy to look at it. With respect to the property tax issue, keep in mind that when the stormwater utility was implemented, there was a shift from property taxes over to the stormwater utility fee, such that there was a corresponding reduction in property taxes. So for this year, just by illustration, the typical home in Downers Grove with a market value of about $300,000, I believe would pay about $100 in a stormwater fee for this year on an annual basis. And that corresponds to about a $111 decrease in the property tax levy for that same property. So we shifted it over. We were not using both. It was a shift from a property tax over to a fee-based system. So I just wanted to point out a few things. And again, this isn't a second appeal. There is a process for handling this. I appreciate that we've discussed this at great length and we've reached 2 different conclusions. That's where we're at.
Could I just reply to your comments?
Yes, and again, we've had this conversation on multiple occasions,
But
and I
it has
realize
to
you
be
want to have it
heard.
on television now, so be my
It has
guest.
to be heard. According to my survey, I would be at 2,200 square feet,
Please send me your survey.
okay? And you're using incorrect documentation to come up with your 2,800 square feet.
But is it off by 400 square feet?
I'm sorry,
Is it off by 355 square feet? It could be off by 35, it could be off by 250. It's still not going to get you to a lower tier.
a survey? A survey?
Sir, I need to see the survey. Please send it to me. I asked you that last time.
Okay, Mayor, I will do so.
I cannot make a comment on a survey I have not seen.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, and again, I appreciate the continuing dialogue. Trust you, I hope we won't, I won't engage like that with everyone, but gentlemen and I have had multiple conversations on this topic, and we're still in good spirits with one another. Thank you for being here tonight. Good evening. Welcome, Father.
Good evening. I'm Father Bill Cullen from St. Mary of Goston Parish, 444 Wilson Street, Downers Grove, Illinois 60515. I also understand that you would like to have some background on those people who speak here. I have been a priest of the Diocese of Jackson, Mississippi for 26 years, and the last 6 years or so I have worked here in this village of Downers Grove. 40 of my years were spent in New York City as a Franciscan teaching brother. I taught on every level of education from elementary school to graduate school. I spent 23 years in Mississippi. I was the superintendent of schools, the director of educational services. I was in charge of strategic pastoral planning for the entire diocese, and I was a pastor of 2 parishes. I also spent 3 years on the missions in Saltillo, Mexico, where they don't have a problem with the water fees because they don't have water. I am here tonight basically to speak to you of 2 reasons. It is, as our previous speaker pointed out, frustrating for the average citizen to come to his government and to be involved in layer after layer of bureaucracy where the people who are elected do not seem to be responding to an individual or to a group of individuals. And that is something that is very much present in our country today. And I would hope on a local level that that would be much more decreased because of the connections of the people. We have parishioners from both St. Joseph and St. Mary on the council here. My first point is that at the very beginning of our government, John Marshall said in his decision regarding tax, and our Supreme Court has told the government of our present day, President Obama and the government, that they might call it a fee, but it is a tax. So to try and shift the discussion over to a word is incorrect. John Marshall said in his famous decision that the power to tax is the power to destroy. The case he was talking about had to do with the freedom of religion and the freedom of churches outside of taxation. We pay for services. We know the difference. We, as the churches of Downers Grove, your churches, we oppose your tax for that very basic reason, because it is a step in the door of destruction. Now, I know you would feel that that's not at all what you're thinking about. However, you have a term of office, and unless you serve forever, other people come along, and you have opened the door to that kind of taxation. And so we must oppose this. We must oppose it, and we have meetings. We have up to 25 of the churches in your district, in the village, that are working to oppose this. That should say something to you. That should say to you that the people of these churches believe the same thing together, that you're trying to tax religion. And not only tax it once, but increase it and increase it. That cannot be. And the group of churches are willing eventually to go to court if we have to. And if that's the case, then of course we'll both spend more money than you will ever gain by this tax on the water. But the second thing is more disconcerting. And that is that this tax that you have voted to put on churches is on the backs of the poorest people in our village. Our churches as a group reach out to the poorest people. As you sit here tonight, we have at St. Mary's a homeless shelter where the people are fed, they take showers, they sleep, they have breakfast. Churches are doing that every single night of the week without a penny from the village, from the government. The poor are the ones that are affected. There are some churches at our meeting that said that your tax this year will throw their budget out completely. We have had attempts to sit down and say, well, can we adjust it a little? Can we take it back? And we can't. We can't do that because of the basic principle that we're dealing with religious freedom here. So your decision affects the poorest people in our village. It affects how we handle counseling. It affects how we handle food distribution. It affects how people live. And so I'm here on behalf of St. Mary's Parish and my cohort, Father John Fan, pastor of St. Joseph, and also Divine Savior. We are united with the other Christian and other denominations in Downers Grove, and this has been a source of uniting us together to oppose this. We say to you as the government to get the money a different way. You said, Honorable Mayor, that they took $100 or $111 out of tax and they put it in a fee. So in other words, nothing really happened. Nobody's taxes went down. The money they paid to the village did not go down. And that tax on the water is going to increase as much as the other taxes do. So it's a fallacious argument. But as I said to you, I'm here tonight because I have worked with the really poor, the poor in Mexico that have nothing. And their government is a government of oppression. We don't want that to happen here. We don't want our poor oppressed because they have no voice. We are the voice of those people. Your priests, your pastors, your deacons are the voice of those people, and we're asking to be heard. And thank you.
Thank you, Father. I appreciate you being here and appreciate the words. It's a privilege to have you here tonight. Just a few things, because I have a feeling that many who are here tonight, this may be the first time that they've engaged in this issue. And there's a very long, long history, which I'm sure is hard for you to appreciate, because this is a topic that the Village of Downers Grove has been discussing for over a decade. Some of you maybe didn't even live here when this conversation first took place. And when the green light was given to go forward with planning a stormwater utility, there was unprecedented public outreach into all corners of our community, public sector, private sector, not-for-profits. We had special meetings for faith-based organizations. And unfortunately, we didn't have anywhere near the engagement that we're having tonight. And I understand it, because perhaps until the first bill showed up, people are busy, you're busy doing your work, you're busy doing your church's work. It didn't ring home, and so now you're here, and we're glad to continue having a dialogue with you. But I mention that because I don't think it is a fair characterization by any stretch, and I'm sure Justice Marshall would agree, that this government has not been responsive. This staff in this government has been exceptionally responsive in, not just responsive, because that doesn't even begin to characterize the word. We understand that meeting people halfway isn't good enough. We have to take it to your doorstep. Sometimes we have to ring the door and come on in. And on this topic, that was something that this government did, this staff did, and this council did over many, 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 many months. And we have had multiple meetings. I know there are individuals standing here tonight that we've met with dozens of times on this topic. And I think all of you need to understand that we appreciate and understand the financial impact, which is that, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, is what we ought to focus on, and not categorically excluding people from the program, because then we have to expand it to all not-for-profit organizations, not just faith-based, or then we are starting to favor one or the other. Categoric exclusion of not-for-profits gets very it gets very difficult because there are organizations that contribute much to our society that don't own property. What this is it's a fee, for those of you who may not know, on the amount of runoff that a property generates. And the shift was done in part because we found, among other things, that not only does property tax and the value of a property have absolutely nothing to do with how much stormwater it generates, and this is a much closer correlation. But we also found out that as property taxes went up, that by far our single-family residences, families in our community, were paying a disproportionate burden of stormwater costs because of the way the property tax system works. About this much. Single-family residents were paying about 75% of the cost of stormwater management, even though they only contributed about 50% or less of the runoff. And as property taxes increased, that delta got bigger and bigger and bigger. So there was a big inequity there. And the question was, well, shouldn't it be based on runoff, sort of the flip side of drinking water? It's sort of a user-based system. Again, it's not a perfect system. It's new. We only implemented it this year. We're still learning some things. That's why we continue to have dialogues to discuss potential revisions, and we've engaged and welcomed the continued conversations that we've had with a number of different segments of our community. But the idea is that there has to be funding, and I haven't heard a single person in 10 years say that we don't need to seriously invest in our stormwater infrastructure and management. Anybody who was here on April 17th and 18th of this year knows firsthand how important stormwater management is. And we get rooms packed like this after every heavy rain. What are you doing to take care of the water? What are you doing to mitigate flooding? Well, this is something the entire community has spoke to, and it's something that we have to make some tough choices in order to fund and finance. And of the various ways that you can pay for this, either the property tax system or the stormwater utility system, on balance, the majority of the council view this to be a more equitable, fair, accountable, and appropriate way to pay for it. Now, the reason why you're all here tonight is because one of the advantages of a utility is that it spreads the cost of stormwater management out over a larger payer base, because everybody who generates runoff contributes. Or they have to contribute in a different way, such as through partnerships or taking steps on their own properties in which to reduce their stormwater impact and runoff, therefore advancing the overall goals of the program. And this brings me to my last point in terms of engagement. We continue to have discussions with those who have approached us with the loudest voices about the impacts upon their organizations, about how can we help you help yourself reduce the runoff that the fee applies to. And we continue to do that. And there have been some proposals. Staff has been very creative in coming up with some ideas on how we can work with not-for-profits and faith-based organizations in particular to help mitigate the impact of the stormwater utility upon the organization. We get it. We are listening. We've had multiple conversations, and we're trying to be creative, and that is really where, at least in my opinion, we ought to focus, is how do we mitigate the impact, not how do we undermine the overall program, because I don't think that's the appropriate solution. So I appreciate all these comments. We're going to hear more, but I wanted to say right out of the box that I think everyone, regardless of their view on this topic, has been extremely responsive, receptive, and proactive in communicating with the community with respect to this topic. I mean, let's face it, this is a new thing for Downers Grove. We're all in this together, and we're very much participating in listening and continuing to work with everybody. And so on that, I just want to say, before we go any further, we very much appreciate everybody being here tonight. Sir, you've been very patient with me. Thank you very much. Please give us your name and address, and we welcome hearing from you.
I'm chairman of the trustees of Faith United Methodist Church, the corner of 59th and Fairview. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. I went to a lot of the church meetings that you've talked about, or you are aware of. I've seen what the city has proposed and back, and I go back to what I learned when I was still working for a living. I don't know how many of you have gone through transactional analysis. I'm sure some of you had, where you go back to the root cause. Well, our root cause is really stormwater and how we take care of it. But I believe the stormwater fee for nonprofit churches should be exempted entirely for the following reasons. I believe in churches, separation of church and state. And I think this fee is forcing the churches to get involved in politics. I don't want my church involved in politics. I don't want the church to work at defeating a council candidate or go through the process of vetting a candidate that is running for office. We're trying to find a candidate that's on our side as far as doing away with stormwater fees. I just don't want to see our churches get involved in politics. I'd like to see us stay away from church and state, and I'm sure there's more than one way to do what you people have done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, sir, did we get your address?
432 59th Street,
In what town?
Downers Grove.
I only
We're
asked-
what's known as the best hidden church in Downers Grove.
I only ask because obviously we have, I'm sure we have guests from other towns, just so our record is clear. Good evening.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here this evening.
Thank you for being here.
My name is Edward Flavin. My address is 814 Lenox Avenue. That's in Bolingbrook, Illinois. Good evening, Mayor Tully, City Council members, and ladies and gentlemen of this community. Thank you very much for your time and for allowing me the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Edward P. Flavin, and I'm the Director of Communications for the Diocese of Joliet. I grew up in Downers Grove and attended and graduated from St. Joseph's Catholic School and later attended and graduated from Downers Grove South High School. I have a number of family members here in the community, and I have long admired how Downers Grove runs and manages its esteemed and diverse village. I want to start by reading to you our mission in our diocese here in Joliet. We, the Roman Catholic Church of Joliet, a people of diverse races and cultures within 7 counties, strive to be the body of Christ by living the faith, preaching the word, building community, serving others, especially the poor, and celebrating our unity through the sacraments. Our diocese incorporates 120 parishes, 54 elementary schools, 7 high schools, and 3 universities. We operate in 7 different counties comprising 655,000 Roman Catholics. If this fee were placed on all these entities, it would smother us financially. Our ministries and programs provide economic growth throughout our communities. I want to provide one simple example this evening on how our churches have an impact on local establishments. Think about all the masses, the weddings, the first communions, the baptisms, the funerals, and the confirmations that take place each year at Divine Savior, St. Joseph's, and St. Mary's. Families and out-of-town guests go out to eat after these events and provide great business to nearby establishments. If we were not here, they would take a major hit. Multiply these times 120 parishes, and the numbers would prove to be staggering. I won't even mention the help we provide for Catholic charities and with PADS. I could go on for a couple of hours on these topics alone. My argument is simple. Our 3 churches alone have become a staple in this community that brings so much good to Downers Grove. I respectfully urge the council to reconsider and eliminate the stormwater utility fee for our religious, non-for-profits, and the financial burden that it will result in. One thing I think that would be important for you to note is I come from Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago, and we worked hand in toe with Mayor Emanuel on his tax that he wanted to propose for Catholic Charities. And we got up in front of him and we told him, if you lay this tax on us, we provide 400 meals for people every single night, and they will be out on the street if you implement this tax. So please consider this when you make your decision. I think that we all take for granted the wonderful things that our communities do, but always know that the churches in particular take special note for what happens to the people that go unnoticed, the people that are out on the street tonight that can't get a bite to eat, that are under the house of St. Mary's, for instance. So keep all those things in mind when you make this consideration. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity. It's an honor to be here tonight, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. And everyone fully understands and appreciates the mission that our fine faith-based organizations have and their contributions to our community. That is without question. Nobody's challenging that. I think as was noted by the good fathers, a number of us are involved in organizations that do that. I myself sit on the board of directors of the Walk-In Ministry of Hope, now known as Hope's Front Door, whose very mission is to address the immediate needs of the poorest in our community. And I know each one of my colleagues has similar experiences. So we understand that mission, we understand its importance, that is not lost on us. We personally contribute, as you do, both our time and our resources to that same mission. So that isn't even a discussion point. We fully understand it. No one is challenging otherwise. Yes, sir, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Dan Martinson. I am the pastor of Hobson Road Community Church, which is located at 2531 Hobson Road in Downers Grove. And I will echo what many of my fellows here have said. I do want to affirm what you have said, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate the communication that you and the board have extended with us over the long haul here. I've been in personal contact with you and others by way of email. Mr. Mayor, you were good enough to respond to me in that email. I appreciate that. Many of these sessions have been conducted in open session, such as this one tonight. I appreciate that. I understand that, as you yourself said, there were meetings for us as members of the faith community going back a long time. I was at some of those meetings, not all, but certainly partook in that. I appreciate that. I would respond to that. We said no then, and we're still saying no. So communication and openness is much appreciated, but it is not the end of the story. As others have said, our issue is with the precedent that is being set here. I suppose you might say, well, that's a slippery slope argument. I would say that you yourself have laid out that slippery slope with the scheduled increases that we will see in the coming years as the fee is currently constructed. It's something that as men and women of principle, we are in a principled battle here. And I'm here, I've spoken to you before, I will keep this brief. I wish to renew the objection on behalf of myself and my congregation of the council's desire and willingness to effectively tax religious organizations. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Good to see you again. Good evening, Mr. Waldak.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. Good to see you again. Bill Waldak, 1409 Willard Place, right here in Downers Grove. And you mentioned before, well, as you know, I've been fighting this for over 10 years since it started. Attended all those meetings, correct, Mayor? I think I had a very good attendance record in opposing that.
I can vouch for that.
Okay. You know, government for the people, what a concept. And the last several years, this council has cut hundreds of thousands of dollars from human and social services for this village. And now, with the stormwater utility, there's a way to dip into the very organizations that provide those human and social services. This can be fixed. And you know it can be fixed because all it takes is 2 words: political will. And if you fix it, you can justify it. Anything else is just an excuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Good to see you. Other questions or comments of a general nature from any members of the audience? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Tom Karstens. I'm a trustee for Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Downers Grove, 5211 Carpenter Street. Like many people here, I agree that the water tax on nonprofits is just wrong. But there's 2 other things that I found troubling with the statements you made, Mr. Mayor. I was at several of the meetings when the water tax was being discussed. And any of the meetings I was at, there was a large contingent. More people were against this water tax than were for it. And yet it was still pushed through, and I find that disturbing. Number 2 is, as a resident of Downers Grove, I find it disturbing that you take money out of my pocket. And you do this by, when you have implemented a fee system, you do not allow me to deduct this on my federal taxes and as such. And in the long run, you say you had $111 in tax before, but you're only paying $100 now. But when I lose that deduction, I lose more than the $111. And I would really like to see you correct it and eliminate this tax. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate you being here. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Pastor Peter Kutcher. I'm with Christian Worship Center in Downers Grove. Our address is 1330 63rd Street. I want to add my voice to the number of the clergy who spoke out tonight. And again, make it really put faces to these numbers. For us, we feed 200 people every month with our food pantry program. In 2014, because of the stormwater fee that was applied to us, we will have to cut it in half. We have no other options. We are at the end of things, and we're cutting services to people who live here, to people who are struggling, and we just adding our voice to ask you to please repeal that and make a way for churches to serve community, which is the best. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being here. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Jill Potts. I live at 216 Lincoln. I love my God, and I love the new stormwater utility fee. I was watching at home, and I drove over. And I've talked to, at the last Coffee with the Council, I spoke. People might not understand, but just because we didn't remove X amount from our taxes to pay X amount in stormwater fees. I think most people are paying more in stormwater fees than they got reduced on their tax bill. And I am fine with that. Most people are fine with that. I think that the record shows that 90-some% of people are paying their bill. And I think back in the day when villages were founded, the forefathers, the first board members and mayors didn't think, you know, someday most of this area is going to be covered with asphalt and rooftops. Maybe we should have a stormwater fee. And the way things have developed, you know, water goes downhill. It goes to the lowest point. If you cover your property with building and asphalt, you're causing a problem. So I'm very happy to pay it. And when you put things in perspective, and I brought up this example at the Coffee with the Council. There's a way to pay your stormwater fees and to provide all your services. I think there's a $8,000 stormwater bill for some church in Downers Grove. So let's say there's 8,000 members in that church. I'm not going to name a church or how many members they have. Let's take some examples. So let's say that church has 8,000 members. Every member buy one less candy bar a year. Let's say they have 4,000 members, 2 less candy bars a year. Let's say they have, you know, and so on and so on. It's possible to pay these bills, and if churches pass the hat and they raise money for, you know, poor people, other countries, whatever. Think about your neighbors. Your stormwater is causing a problem. Helping financially will solve the problem. That money goes into an account that is used to improve the stormwater situation for your friends and neighbors whose yards and homes and businesses go underwater when there's a big flooding problem. So I'm very happy with it, and I think everyone should pay their fair share. You know, whether it's a car dealer, a mom and pop business, a resident, whatever. the way it used to be, it was just people who owned property. So basically, homeowners were paying for all the stormwater problems caused by all the nonprofits and car dealerships and shopping malls. But now, everyone can pay their fair share. I don't think it's too much to ask. I think churches can figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being here. Other questions or comments of the general nature? Good evening.
Hi. Tony Libertosi, 4123 Sterling, Downers Grove. I've been here 27 years and I love Downers Grove. We had an opportunity a few years back to sell our house and make a lot of money. And they probably would have knocked my house down. But my wife and I decided to stay here because we love Downers Grove. I go to Christian Worship Center in Downers Grove on 63rd and Dunham. I've been sponsoring a food pantry for 3 years there. And I'm really impressed with the intelligence that I have here listening to. But I'm just a truck driver for 40 years, so I'll talk like a truck driver.
To an extent.
To an extent, yeah.
Thank you.
I'll keep it clean. I've heard a lot.
Still in the audience.
Right. I've heard a lot, Mayor, tonight about homeless people. You need to come to our food pantry. We have people right here in our town that are ashamed to come and get a bag of food or a box of food because they don't want some neighbor to know that they're struggling, you know. And by this raise in fees, we're already at our low end, so it's really going to hurt us. We're already giving them, instead of 3 cans, we're giving them 1 can now. And it may not sound like a lot of money to the public, but to a church that's struggling, and any church that's struggling, helping our people here in town, not just homeless people. This is going to be a big burden on us to you know. The reason I could say this is because I came up poor. And today I'm blessed not to be poor. And my mission in life is to help people the best I can. And that's why I'm staying here in Downers Grove, because I know a couple of you fellows here, and I'm putting my trust in you. So please, through the grace of God, make the right decision to help people in this town who are needy and sometimes, and a lot of times, embarrassed to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Your comments were eloquently delivered. Thank you for being here tonight. Other questions or comments of the general nature? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Heller, member of St. Andrew's Parish, 1125 Franklin and Downers Grove, also a resident of the community. You've heard from me before. I'm the president of the council of the church. And the only point I'd like to make is that most of our parishioners are Downers Grove residents already, so they are paying their fair share. What you're asking them to do here in taking money out of their goodwill donations that support the church, primarily go into social services, is to divert more of that money that they intend for other purposes into this public infrastructure. It seems to me that unlike residences, unlike the businesses and industries here, the primary focus of all of these organizations here that are nonprofit is for the benefit of the community. Most of the other people are either residents or they're trying to make a profit here. So that distinction, I think, should, on its face, exempt the churches and the other nonprofits from this particular method of raising money. So I guess that's it.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate you being here tonight.
I'll make this real quick.
Good evening.
Scott Oberle, First Congregational United Church of Christ, Downers Grove, 1047 Curtis. I couldn't agree with his comments more. I feel, in principle, it's a double fee for the majority of our residents who are Downers Grove residents, and then are in effect being penalized for worshiping in Downers Grove in terms of their pay. I appreciate the good lady's comments, but as a church that had almost $200,000 in flooding, it's supposed to be a fair share, but the Park District backs up to our property. Once was our church property, but is now Park District, and they receive a full exemption. Unfortunately, the grade of the Park District park runs into our lot, as does a city rented out lot to the bank. And so we deal with stormwater from both those properties. So we care about stormwater and mitigation, believe me. Standing a foot of water in our basement, and we care about it. But the principle that my colleagues have raised, I don't think I could have said it better than the man just said about church membership. And they are already paying their fair share, most of our members. We brought the petition earlier in May with 1,200 signatures. I think about 2/3 of them were Downers Grove residents. So thank you for time. I won't take any more, but appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. Good to see you again. Good evening, Mr. Gilbert.
How are you, Mayor, Council? Good to see you again. It's nights like this that I miss sitting up there with you. I'll be short and sweet. I want to add my voice to those opposed to taxing the faith-based and nonprofit organizations within the church, within the community, and remind you that one of the things that makes this community strong, and by the way, I've lived here for 56 years, one of the things that makes it strong is our good schools, good churches, an interest in the family, in a generally strong social fabric in our community. One of the tenets of a good social fabric is the churches and the good that they do through the donations that people choose to give them. This is not really a debate about stormwater. It's a debate about where we pay for it. I think the debate on the stormwater issue has gone long, and many, many hours of your time has been spent on that. But I urge you to reconsider taxing the faith-based organizations in particular, for the simple reason that the good that they do in this community saves the community a good deal of money by having to replace those needs of particularly the poor and the underprivileged throughout the community. We need to continue, as we have in the long history in this village, of supporting the churches and nonprofit organizations and letting them do the work that they do best while the government does the work that they do best and the citizens do their thing. We need to support the efforts of the church, allow them to use their funds as they have been, and avoid adding the burden of an additional tax on them. I urge you to reconsider it, find another source for that money, and I know that's a tall task. Good luck to you in your endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments of a general nature, please. Good evening.
Evening, Mayor Tully, members of the board. My name is Mike Balsamo, B-A-L-S-A-M-O. I reside at 5747 Lyman Avenue, Downers Grove, Illinois, and have been a member of this community for over 40 years. I'm not a priest, I'm not the head of any of the churches here in town, but I came here tonight to address two issues, or to speak on two things. First, I want to voice my support for the efforts of the religious and nonprofit organizations. I believe that whatever you call it, it is in fact a tax. You're playing semantics here. A fee levied by a governing body on its people is a tax. And as such, nonprofit organizations who are tax exempt based on federal government standards should be exempt from this. On a second note, I would like to say I absolutely have seen the effects of flooding in this town. The office I work at had about a foot of standing water in it. It's at ground level this past major storm we had. But in the 40 years I've lived here, I haven't seen anywhere near that kind of flooding in this town on a regular basis. There are some stormwater issues for sure, and most of them are caused by the pattern that has been developed in this town and allowed by past councils of overbuilding the property in this town. And relatively small lots, having relatively large houses built on them, have nowhere for the water to go but down the hill and into somebody else's backyard or basement. As I said, the second thing I would like to ask tonight is I'd like to get a commitment from this commission, this council, to continue to look at this fee that you've assessed on the people of Downers Grove, because I believe that it is not in the least bit being put out there fairly. I looked at my own property when the bill first came out and said, how can this be? My lot, my whatever level that you put on the housing, is pretty close to accurate. Within 100 feet, like I say, it could go either way. I'm not about to protest that. But the house across the street from me is probably exactly the same. It's slightly bigger, and we're in that second tier. On the other hand, my lot is much larger than his lot, and my property is only 16% impervious, despite the fact that I'm in a tier 2. I have a lot of empty yard that's just got trees and bushes and grass in it, where the ground can soak up the water. And I think the problem we've seen in Downers Grove of stormwater runoff has been that too much has been allowed to be built that doesn't allow for water to soak into the ground where it falls and forcing it into our ditches and creeks and streams and rivers. I went to a village-sponsored meeting on the stormwater after the fee was enacted, and was basically met by representatives of the stormwater utility saying, guess what? There's nothing you can do about it. You can appeal, you're not going to succeed. You can request waivers or reductions, it ain't going to happen. In fact, one thing you can count on is that this fee is going to go up every year. The argument that was used at those meetings was, well, probably the county of DuPage is going to assess a fee like this on themselves, as if Downers Grove collecting this fee is going to prevent the county from also collecting this fee. What I'm asking from you tonight is a commitment to the people of Downers Grove to not say that this is done and over with, to say that you will continue to look at how the stormwater situation can be dealt with and paid for in a fair manner to the members of this community, to the religious organizations and to the average taxpayer who's just living here, trying to do the best they can in a community that we all find a pleasant place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, and would hazard to say that I think our actions demonstrate that commitment already. Other questions or comments of a general nature? Questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight? Good evening.
Hi, my name is Holly Price, and I live at 6620 Powell Street in Downers Grove, and I've been a resident here for about 25 years. And I'm here to ask you to please repeal the tax on non-for-profit organizations, in particular churches. And I've been listening to a lot of people speak tonight, and I think that this issue goes beyond what churches have been able to provide for the poor. There's something more than that. You can be hungry, but you can still be happy. But if you don't have a reason to live, if you don't have a faith, you have no hope. And that's what these churches are providing. And I think it is unjust to tax churches that are helping raise people and helping people raise their children to be people that are responsible, caring, honest, the kind of people that you want to have to be your neighbors, kind of people that you want to marry your children, kind of people that you want to be friends with, kind of people that you can trust when you do business with them. And so I think that beyond all these things, like what the pastor from St. Mary's was saying, I agree with. When you tax churches, what you do is you start opening up the door to destroy churches and to take control of them. And I think that that's unjust, to try to control churches. Everyone knows that churches have a lot of people that go to them, and so they all have these big parking lots because people have to have a place to park. You can't park on gravel, and they probably wouldn't be considered the proper stuff anyways. You can't park on mud or grass to work the perfect runoff. They have to have a place to park their cars. Everyone drives now. We don't have horse and buggies anymore. And so to me, it seems logical that churches would be a target. I'm sure that wasn't intended by the council, but yet that's how it's going. And it's not even the money, though it's going to continue to go up. It's the principle. I want to continue to raise my family here. I don't want to have my church being attacked. It's hard enough with the things that are happening in our federal government. I like living in Downers Grove, and I want to keep living here. And I think that the church is what has been able to help me to raise my children to be good citizens. I'm proud of that. My husband and I are honest people, and we have a lot of accountability. Our pastors help us, our other fellow parishioners help us. And that's what churches do for people. They give them an opportunity to have responsibility, and if you make a bad decision, they help you come back and change. So it's not just about feeding the poor, why the churches are doing good things. They're helping people to have a reason to be ethical, to have morals. And if you're taxing churches and you're trying to control them like that, now all of a sudden we don't have a reason why people should behave a certain way. And then that's chaos. And is that good for anything? Is that good for our village? Is that good for our police department? For our supposed low crime rate we have now because we have this great community? It's wrong. Please reconsider what you're doing. I'd really appreciate that. On behalf of myself, my husband, our 7 children, our parish at St. Joseph's, all of our neighbors at Divine Savior, and all the other churches in the area. These churches are doing more than feeding the poor. They're helping people to be able to have values, to be responsible, to be caring. And if you start taxing the churches and trying to take control of them, it's just one more step closer to controlling what we do within our churches. It's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. And lest any silence be misconstrued, nobody is suggesting that we're trying to either attack or destroy or control churches or undermine their contribution to the community. That is absolutely wrong.
Good evening again, David Maestri, 707 Douglas Road. I didn't come here for this. I got drawn into it though. As you may know, I am in an area that is unincorporated. We are not affected by the Downers Grove storm water fee. We will be subjected to the one that the county imposes, which I anticipate won't be too long from now. But something happened. I was raised in a Union family, and I was raised Catholic. One of the missions of the Roman Catholic Church through the ages has been to fight for the working man. Not the elite, the powerful, not for the government, but for the working man, which is what they do on a daily basis. It's time for me to help pay him back. I seem to have been drawn in this. Like I said, I didn't come here for this. So I feel urged to present a motion to the floor and the council that they reconsider the tax on the church for this stormwater retention fee. Second. We'll let the record show the motion had been presented and seconded, and let the council address it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Other questions or comments of a general nature? Good evening.
Tim Robertson, Senior Pastor at Gloria Dei Lutheran Church, 4501 Main Street, Downers Grove. Apologize for my appearance, but I got stuck in traffic coming back from spending time in the North Woods with my father. Maybe I look a little homeless. Maybe that's appropriate. I won't speak on behalf of the poor. That's already been eloquently spoken. And my legs, after riding 3,000 miles for the poor on behalf of the Habitat 500, speak on that behalf already. And I want to speak on behalf of the rich. Being that I've lived all across the country in this blessed ministry called pastoral ministry, I've lived in a couple very difficult and desperate areas. One in Baltimore, Maryland, and another in Tacoma, Washington. Where there's desperation, desperate people do desperate things. Your churches, and they're well represented here, are speaking on behalf of those and trying to give hope. And where there's not hope, the consequences of that is desperation. And where there is desperation, there's the opportunity and the propensity for crime. So on behalf of those who are rich, and that's pretty much most of us here, who all of us, I think most are advocating on behalf of the poor, but also one can cut off one's nose to spite one's face. And as you solve one problem, you possibly create another as you drive up the crime rate, possibly as a response to this. So I concur with everyone else on advocating on behalf of the poor. My record speaks volumes to that, anyone that knows me. But I also want to advocate on behalf of the rich that are here siding for the poor. The consequence of this might not be where we'd like it to go. And the big advocates here on behalf of making hope real. There's many that are struggling much more than Gloria Day that won't be able to serve, and they really want to make this a great place to live. No matter whether you're rich or poor, and to provide hope. Hope for the rich, but even more so hope for the poor. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Thank you for being here tonight. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I promised my wife I wouldn't speak, but I can't keep from it. My name is Doug Artis. I live at 1313 Blanchard Street in Downers Grove, and I'm a member of the trustee board at First Baptist Church just down the street. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that because you're imposing a stormwater fee tax on our churches, they're going to go out of business, that they're going to leave your community. I'm not here to tell you that. It's not going to happen today. It might happen tomorrow. I doubt it. But what I see happening is a precedent is being set. And I firmly believe that each one of you has great motives for what you're doing. I don't doubt in my heart at all that you are very honorable people. But your time is limited. You won't be a commissioner or a councilman all the time. Someday there's going to be another council, another mayor. They may not be as honorable. The stormwater fee is it's not a real big deal right now, but with the way that it's structured for the next few years, it could become a big deal. I listen to a lot of music. One of my favorite bands is a band called Rush. You might know them. And they talk about a song that says, when they turn the pages of history and they look back on these days long ago, will they read of us with sadness for the seeds we let grow? We turned our gaze from the castles in the distance. We cast our eyes down to the path of least resistance. What's tomorrow? What organization, what source of revenue tomorrow will be put upon the churches and the not-for-profits as well? Will the police and fire? Will the other services that are offered by the community through our taxes all be pushed off? Again, I don't have any doubt of your honor. I believe you. Several of you serve on your churches. You understand the issue. I don't see any deceit. But I want you to consider, you could be the linchpin. We have several examples throughout our United States. DuPage County right here, Champaign, Baltimore, different places where this is passed. And they have felt that it's okay. But we're here telling you that it's not. Not just because we don't want to pay the money. We are already paying the money. But because we see the principle that it could set. We see the direction that this could send us. You have the ability tonight, within the next few weeks, months, whatever you want to call it, you have the ability to be the one group that stands up and says, you know what? All you other people that did this, we're not going to follow along with you. We're not going to just go along with pushing this off on our churches and our not-for-profits. You have that ability. When people start to look at other communities that are doing this, and they look to find reasons why they shouldn't, you could be that reason. I ask you to reconsider. Again, I know you're honorable people. I thank you for your service, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for being here. Other questions or comments of a general nature? This topic or any other topic? The floor is open. Questions or comments of a general nature? Hearing none, I just want to, on behalf of myself and the rest of the Village Council, thank everyone for coming down here and sharing your views and thoughts with us. We do appreciate it, and we have heard you. It's obviously a big, complicated issue. There are many sides to this issue, and it is something that we have wrestled with for some time. And let's face it, not everyone's in agreement on it. But this is the path that we have gone forward on. The commitment that I think has already been demonstrated by actions and not just words is the willingness to actually continue this dialogue, continue this discussion, and perhaps if we can't achieve the solution that everyone would like, perhaps we can achieve one that might be acceptable and perhaps address some of the issues that we've heard vocalized most strenuously, which is my personal preference, is that we focus on the impact. And I think there are ways to do that and continue to reach out and hope that many of our organizations, faith-based organizations and others, will continue to work with us to see what we can do. Because there have been ideas and proposals put forward, and I think we ought to pursue those first and see what can be accomplished. But clearly no one was ever for a moment of the mind of trying to establish a precedent or undermine extremely valuable faith-based organizations, which we all fully recognize their huge contributions to our community. I do understand and appreciate, and we all do, that is a perception, and it is not a wildly speculative perception. But rest assured, make no mistake, that is not at all where any of this is coming from. This is our trying to be good stewards of our community, our infrastructure, and providing for something that we know everyone in the community has cried out for numerous occasions, which is effective and long-term management of stormwater infrastructure and everything that goes along with it. So I want to thank everyone for being here. It was really a delightful conversation, a sort of mini town hall. So thank you for all your comments and for taking time out of your evenings to come down here and be part of your community and be part of the conversation. We greatly appreciate it. And that does bring us, though, to the end of our public comment section. Believe it or not, we have about a dozen other items to go through tonight. So feel free to stay if you'd like. There will be some council member reports and then items of business that you may or may not be interested in. But perhaps we'll give everyone just a moment. Absolutely. I look forward to it. Thank you. We'll see you this year. Thank you for coming. All right, we've allowed everyone who wishes to leave this portion of the meeting. If we could sort of bring it back down and focus on the next item on our agenda. This would be item 5, council member reports. I know with the passage of time since our last meeting that we have all sorts of things to report. So since he's pouring water, I won't pick on him. I'll start with Commissioner Jose. Councilmember reports, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to point out that the Downers Grove Historical Society is selling their annual Christmas ornament. They can be purchased for $15 at the Downers Grove Public Library Circulation Desk, as well as other locations like the Downers Grove Community Bank, the Park District Museum, Christina's Cafe, Olive Tap, Timberline Trains, and Wanamaker's. I hope folks will take advantage of them. I know I pick one up every year, and they make nice presents. So, thanks very much, Mayor. That's all I've got.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Commissioner. And to make sure I don't forget, I'm going to call on Commissioner Olson next. Councilmember reports. Commissioner Olson, assuming you're still there.
Yes, Mayor, I am still there, if you can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. I have no report tonight.
Wise man. Commissioner Barnett.
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Rankin?
I have no report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Durkin?
None.
That's the shortest answer I've heard. Commissioner Newstead?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to let everyone know that the Downers Grove Police Department has developed a special needs identification program for Downers Grove residents who may be at risk of becoming confused, disoriented, lost, or missing. Persons that suffer, of any age, that suffer from Alzheimer's, dementia, Down syndrome, autism, or those that are at risk of wandering and have communication difficulties are eligible to participate. It's a great service that our police department provides. There's a lot of information about it on our website, which is at www.downers.us. It's just another level of service that our police department provides for those folks that are in need the most. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to point out one thing, and more information on that is available on our website, but as mentioned, one of our goals in the village's long-range plan is to continue to be a good steward of both financial and environmental sustainability. And so I'm pleased to point out that the village of Downers Grove received yet another award along those lines, and that is the Governor's Sustainability Award. The village is the proud recipient of the 2013 Illinois Governor's Sustainability Award, and this is based on Downers Grove's commitment to environmental stewardship, which has been recognized for its green practices in a number of areas, including waste reduction and recycling, water conservation and stormwater pollution prevention, speaking of stormwater, energy conservation, and also transportation. So we all add our congratulations to village staff and all our employees who make this possible. It's certainly perhaps inspired by the village council, but inspiration is only, what do they say, 1%. The rest of it's 99% perspiration. So thank you to village staff for the perspiration that made achieving another incredibly impressive award possible. Congratulations and thank you for all that you do. That brings me to the end of my report. And that brings us to item 6 on our agenda tonight, public hearings, and we do have 2 public hearings. I know it feels like we just had a public hearing, but we have 2 formal public hearings. And the first one that we will be addressing tonight pertains to the 2014 budget for the village of Downers Grove. This public hearing will now please come to order. This public hearing has been called by the village council to consider the proposed fiscal 2014 village budget. Notice of this hearing was published in the Downers Grove Suburban Life, and a certificate of publication is made part of these proceedings. I would like to summarize the procedures which we will follow for tonight's public hearing. First, Village Manager David Fieldman will provide an overview, or perhaps a brief overview, of the proposed budget. Next, there will be an opportunity for members of the village council to ask questions or make comments. Next, there will be an opportunity for members of the public, those of you who are still here, to make statements or comments or to submit written statements or comments for the record. Then I will ask if any members of the village council wish to make any final statements or ask any final questions, and thereafter I will ask for a motion to adjourn this public hearing. Remember, it's one of 2. At this public hearing, witnesses will not be sworn, and a verbatim written transcript of the statements or testimony given at the hearing will not be prepared. However, a recording of the procedures will be made on village equipment and retained until minutes of the hearing have been prepared and approved by the village council. So with that, I will move right to the first item, which is the staff presentation. And before turning it over to Manager Fieldman, I will point out that we have had numerous conversations in public meetings with respect to the proposed fiscal 2014 budget. I believe we are now on number 6 or 7. We've had a number of different public meetings and comments on it, so the fact that we may not have extensive discussion tonight shouldn't be taken as anything other than this is the next step in a long process, but certainly welcome additional public comments and inquiries from members of the public. But with that, I will turn it over for a brief presentation or overview from Village Manager David Fieldman.
Because this budget has been presented and discussed, as the mayor outlined, in several public meetings since October 5th, we have no further summary tonight. I do encourage people interested who may have learned about these issues tonight to take a look at our website. There's a great summary of the budget and the proceedings that have taken place to this point. I do want to point out one change to the proposed budget as a result of several meetings and council discussion. The Stormwater Fund budget has been changed to reflect a 6.4% increase in the stormwater fees as opposed to the 10% increase in stormwater fees that was originally included in the proposed budget published in late September. With that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That brings us to the next item, which is whether there are any questions or comments from members of the village council with respect to the proposed fiscal 2014 budget. Commissioner Barnett.
I have two, Mayor, well, a couple of them maybe. One, am I reading correctly in the, some of the questions, responses there, that SWO 80 improvements, those are the, that suggests, if I'm reading it right, that the change from 10% to 6.4 puts us at a condition where we likely won't make any of these specific newly identified solutions to the April flood? In other words, we're continuing on the pre-April planning route, right?
No, that's not correct. There are some items that have come up, some projects that have come up as part of the April flood that would be made.
Okay.
Most of them would not be made if we continue fee increases at the 6% level.
In particular, what is the Hill grate situation included in there as a fix or no fix based on the new rate?
There will be a new rate at Hill and Grand as part of this year's budget. 2013 is designed, 2014 construction included in the budget as proposed.
Okay. All right. And then another thing that just, maybe I didn't say it well enough at our last meeting, but I'd like to see another pie chart. I'm building a record here, Mayor, you'll understand that. That 2012 basis, there were I think 5 choices or so, maybe 6, of potential foregone revenues that basically were different levels of stormwater fee increase. I'd like to see the one that looks like the 6.4% increase, but doesn't have any of the NFP contributions. You know what I'm asking?
Yes, that would be, we can find that one. We presented that one a couple months ago. We'll present that, and whether the fees go up or down, the percentages would stay the same, whether we exempt them or not. The remaining percentages of the pie remain the same.
It's that split without them included.
Correct.
As a percentage of the whole that I'm after.
We can show that.
And then I only, just because this is part of the discussion, I reiterate from my colleagues, Mayor, that we've talked, and we continue to talk up here, and I think we're still doing a little talking past each other about trying to mitigate the impact, and certainly that's what this newly presented budget level increase does. But what we've heard, certainly from myself and certainly from the audience tonight, it had to do more with, long-term philosophy about funding and appropriate roles for each group, far less than the specific amount of money. To be sure, we heard about the money impacts in the immediacy, but there was a lot of discussion about things that were far beyond just the impacts. So I hope we don't lose sight of that discussion. That's all I've got, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioners. Other questions or comments from members of council? Commissioner Easthead?
Thank you, Mayor. Just looking through the information we have here tonight, we have 16 funds in this budget that we're talking about, and we're at a point in this organization and with this council, and because of our long-range planning and our financial planning, that we're really only talking about one of these funds and a very small component of that fund, which is the rate increase for the following year. As we talk about the stormwater utility and the stormwater fund, this utility is in its infancy, and we are getting experience each day and every month, and by the end of this year, we'll have one full year under our belt to look at the future going forward. We heard a little bit about the future councils and the future of this utility tonight from our guests, and I look forward to having this conversation every year, because it will be an every year conversation from this council and others, where we do look at the experience from the previous year and look at the utility as a whole, but we also have the ability to set the rate. It's important to note that we're talking about one thing in a giant budget that in years past has been nitpicked and pulled apart from line by line. This village council and this staff has given us an opportunity to get through a huge undertaking in a way that is concise and forward-moving and forward-thinking, and that's because of the hard work that's gone into this all year. So as we talk about the budget hearing tonight, we're really hearing a lot about stormwater utility. I don't want to forget all the other work that's gone into this budget to get us to a point where we can kind of have a narrow conversation about a huge part of our job up here as council members. So congratulations to everybody. Whether or not we approve or are in favor of a rate increase or a stormwater utility or whatever, we're talking about one fund out of the 16, and all the others are in great health. So that's my comment tonight, Mayor, and I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Other questions or comments at this stage from members of the council? Commissioner Jose, and then I'm going to go to Commissioner Olson next. A fair warning.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to give kudos to staff, because this is I think Mayor said this is the 6th meeting we've had on the budget, and the property tax levy for operations is once again flat. I believe it's the third straight or fourth straight year it's either been flat or reduced. And I think that's important. And this budget also shows our commitment to infrastructure. And I think it's important to remember that as part of the discussion that we just had on the stormwater utility, that there was no one on the council, whether it was the previous council that put the utility in place or the folks that are sitting up here now, that isn't dedicated to making sure that we maintain our infrastructure. We're putting a lot of funds into that, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of this is necessary because of federal mandates, et cetera, but it's also because we have a 15-year plan to ramp up to get to the funding level that we should be at, and it's because for a number of years prior to today, stormwater was one of the things that was underfunded. And the reality is that we're looking at, if I've done my math right off of one of the staff charts, about a $2.1 million gap between what it is that should be spent on capital maintenance, on O&M, just for our stormwater system, and what it is that we're raising through the stormwater utility. And that's why we're seeing the increases that are projected as part of the plan. We've chosen to stick to that plan with the 6.4% increase for the 2014. But it's important that folks understand that these numbers aren't pulled out of the sky. This is an effort to make sure that we're maintaining our system to the level required and to the high standards that I think all residents in Downers Grove have come to adopt and expect from the Village of Downers Grove. It's a great community. We all love living here, and it's important that we do what is necessary to maintain it. And I think that's the commitment you're seeing from all of us up here. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Hey, Mayor? Sorry.
No, go ahead. Commissioner Olson, if you can wait one moment, I'm going to call on Commissioner Barnett.
I'd forgotten about David. I apologize. Sorry, David. I forgot you were in the cloud.
No problem.
I had one more question about one of the answers, as it relates to the grants question. For lack of a better technical term, we're going to assume any future grants would be treated kind of as gravy. They'd pick up at wherever the ending budget point for that season was relative to the capital layout, right?
That's exactly correct.
All right. I still think that maybe ought to be somehow policy-fied. Just because the question could arise certainly about should that be some sort of an additional abatement or calculation at the back end. And I think this is the right thing to do with it, but I think maybe it'd be a good idea to sort of further codify that in whatever way we think is appropriate.
Yeah, what we mean by gravy is one-time revenues should be used for one-time expenses like for their capital as opposed to building an operating and maintenance approach on grant money. So that's what we've been talking about.
Or rebates of fees in any way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Particularly if that's a good point, particularly if they arise in, and I think we do this in other enterprise fund contexts. So for example, the stormwater utility, which is treated like an enterprise fund, if we were fortunate enough to get a $2 million grant and a one-time opportunity, that should affect what any fee would be in a positive manner, positive for the residents, negative for the amount. Because this is something that we're going to continue to look at on an annual basis, because the amount of the fee is calculated pretty simply. We look at what our projected maintenance and infrastructure needs are, we know what those dollars are, and then we have to back into them. It's no different than we treat the water fund or the parking fund. We know what it costs to run the water lines, we know what it costs to maintain the water towers, and we take that cost, and just like any other organization, any other business, back into it, and what do we need in order to have those dollars there, so when the time comes to have to sandblast and repaint a water tower, we have the funds to do it. And that's how the stormwater utility and the stormwater fund is going to work. So to your point, that absolutely ought to be reflected that way. And I think that's why we look at it every year, because we'll know what our grant experience is, and if we are fortunate enough to get some influx of unforeseen funds, then that absolutely ought to have an impact of lowering the fee or at least modifying it for whatever it is, because the way an enterprise fund operates.
Well, you've just demonstrated why I think we need to codify it, because I think we just said opposite things.
Yeah, because we're operating in a deficit position as regards to not meeting our capital needs, even in the current structure, That makes this enterprise fund slightly different, so I just watched the policy discussion start to happen, which means we should
Well, there
probably
you go.
get that up for.
I'm glad I said the opposite, because that was my tricky way of underscoring your point.
Well played.
But yes, but that makes perfect sense to have that predetermined for what to do in that eventuality. How about that? Other questions? Okay, Commissioner Olson, questions or comments at this point in the public hearing on the proposed fiscal 2014 budget?
You know, Mayor, I think I have another chance to comment after the public comments. Is that correct?
We do, you do not. I'm just kidding. Yes, you do.
All right, I'll withhold my comments until after hearing from the public.
All right, any other questions or comments from members of the council at this stage? And then I would like to open it up to any members of the audience for any questions or comments with respect to the proposed fiscal 2014 budget for the Village of Downers Grove. Questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, Dr. Goodman.
Good evening, Mayor Tully, commissioners, staff, and ladies and gentlemen. I'm Gordon Goodman. I live at 5834 Middaugh. And there were two topics that I'd like to address. The first one is this stormwater utility and stormwater solutions for the village. I think that the village has moved in the right direction to implement the stormwater utility, and I know there are growing pains in any change, and that it's a difficult matter to balance all of the needs and attitudes of the village, and that's why you get the big bucks, because you're doing it. Aside from expressing support for the general point of view that you have and the work that you're doing to find money to address our stormwater problems, I have a couple specific questions. When I look at the document, I guess it's section 3 of the budget, which is the sources of revenue and expenditures by fund, if I look on pages 3.2 or 3-2 and 3-3, there's an item there, item 443, that says stormwater utility. And if I look at the income, the sources of revenue for the stormwater utility are classified in several categories. Category 44 is sales revenues. And under category 44 for the stormwater utility, I read $3,628,000. But if I go on in that spreadsheet to category 45, which is fees and charges, for this category, or item 443, I see no fees or charges. So I'm asking whether that item isn't misclassified in this spreadsheet.
Software glitch that misclassified it in the first run. It'll be changed from column 44 to column 45 upon the final budget.
So that is the amount that our fees from the utility are expected to yield in the next fiscal year. Is that correct?
That reflects the proposed 10% increase that was proposed at the time of publication. What's on the table now is a 6.4% increase, which actually decreases that number by about $125,000.
So when the revised spreadsheet is prepared, it will put that item into column 45, and it will reduce the item by another 100 and some thousand.
It will be moved to column 45 and reflect whatever policy as far as the fee is set during these discussions by the council.
So that's not as definite as the position of the number. The number is still in the air. or cloud. Okay, so in any case, the second point I wanted to raise was the answer to staff, or to council questions that's contained in the, well, I guess it's not a green sheet anymore, but the discussion of this topic. It says there are answers to council questions that were raised the 1st of November, or maybe the answers are as of the 1st of November. What stormwater capital projects and maintenance activities should be completed and will not be completed under the proposed revenues and expenses in the stormwater fund? We have a recommendation of what should be done in order to deal with our problems, and the problem is we don't have enough money to do it all. So as I understand it, that based on the original numbers, it was about 3.5 million that would be available, and that's roughly equal to what was regarded as the maintenance and operation expenses for the year. So the question was there going to be any money left for the, I guess it's approximately 2.4 million worth of capital expenses that are recommended for this year? And the answer seems to be no. And if you revise downward the amount of fees that you're expecting to collect from the utility, maybe some of the maintenance and operation won't be done this year too. So I think you have these needs for the community to consider, as well as the wishes of the community that you hear a lot about in these presentations. And you and the staff have a difficult challenge here. I just wanted to call attention to those. I'm in favor of moving ahead as rapidly as we can with both the needed maintenance and operation and also the improvements of our capital plant. It's been a long while, since 1963, when the first stormwater management plans were obtained from Novak Engineering, and we haven't really been successful over those 50 years in doing what needs to be done for the community. I'm glad that you people are dealing with it, but you have to overcome some of this static and continue to deal with it. There's no time like the present, and it's been a long time in coming. So good luck and best wishes on stormwater. The second topic that I wanted to turn to is the use of the hotel tax money for community grants. We still have on our books, and we're very successful over several years in supporting community grants to help organizations like the non-for-profits and other community organizations to do special things that they couldn't otherwise do without the village's support. During our budget crisis in the last 4 or 5 years, that was something that the council decided at the last minute in the budget process to remove, and to use all of the $800,000 approximately that comes in from the hotel tax for general fund activities. When that grant program was suspended, there was some discussion about whether the ordinance should be changed and the community grants removed from the ordinance, or whether that should be continued and the Community Grants Commission, which oversees that, still be on the books of the village. And it was decided to continue it. I'm surprised that during the long-range planning financial discussions, over the last few years, that topic of what to do about the community grants and whether now the village is sufficiently able to control its finances that it could again begin to give money for these worthwhile causes through the Community Grants Commission has not been a subject of discussion. When I brought it up earlier in the discussions of this budget, I was told that that is a topic which is not appropriate at the present time, but would be appropriate in the discussions of long-range planning. So I want to remind you that that's unfinished business, and I will be looking for the council to take up the question of community grants in the next long-term planning discussion. I think you might have enough information to do it now, but it would take for people on the council to agree with that position in order to achieve that. So I don't see that happening right away, but I hope it will happen in the discussions of the budget for 2015. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. Always good to see you. Thank you for your comments. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to the proposed fiscal 2014 budget? Hearing none, then we go back to final comments or questions from members of the Village Council with respect to the fiscal 2014 budget. Commissioner Olson, you wanted to defer until now, so I'll give you first crack.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I really did, after hearing a great deal of public comment this evening, and just listening to that and appreciating the, it sounds like with a large crowd, even though I was unable to be present. Just the sheer number of speakers, certainly speaks to the importance of the issue. I want to reemphasize something I've stated in previous meetings and a position that I've taken. I know we've lowered our request for a fee increase from 10% now to 6.4%, and you recognize and understand that my colleagues, some of my colleagues feel that that's an appropriate level. I still am unconvinced. This year, especially given what we've been hearing from the churches and our desire and our stated desire to continue to work with them to achieve different strategies to mitigate some of the concerns that they're having, I think that along with the factor of this is new to the community, and we hear some commentary to that effect tonight as well, I think that increasing the fee this year by an amount greater than the general rate of inflation is premature, and I very much feel that in order to adequately allow us time to understand the response of the community, the needs of the community, we should be more measured in our fee increases. A couple other points on that topic. One, I'd note that this fee, as Mayor, you did state earlier, this fee is set on an annual basis, and while I support an inflationary increase this year, I'm not precluding supporting other fee increases in future years, and may believe that's appropriate at that time. I'd also like to note that whether we spend 10% or 6.4%, yes, that is real money. But in this year where we're spending down a significant amount of money, several $1 million from bond proceeds that were issued in past years, I don't think that it's appropriate at this juncture to increase the fee significantly until we've had a chance to really understand the impact of the community and then work with those affected by the fee to understand their concerns, to respond to their concerns, and then move forward from there. So, I just ask my colleagues and certainly look forward to being there in person next week continue the discussion, but I'd ask my colleagues to, given what we've heard tonight from residents, from churches, from other organizations, to give some thought to what I've proposed, and I think Commissioner Durkin has also supported, at least in previous meetings, of an inflationary, no more than an inflationary increase in this year, given that we do have bond proceeds to spend down this year, and we aren't precluding ourselves from for the future. So thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Otherwise, again, want to thank the staff and my colleagues for all the work that's gone into the budget. It's a great document, and I'm very pleased that we are operating this community in a fiscally responsible manner that really is becoming of the great residents of Downers Grove. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Other final comments or questions from members of the Village Council with respect to the proposed fiscal 2014 budget? Commissioner Barnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. I've heard mentioned at a couple of different meetings this idea, reflecting back on the budget, some of the budget challenges of the past as crisis, in sort of a past tense mode. And I guess I just want to caution my colleagues. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but our total sort of cuts when we were trying to be reactionary were something like $4.5 million.
That's correct.
Right. And so that felt painful and wasn't a lot of fun. There's certainly several of us up here that endured that. We're still $2.5 to $3 million light on maintaining with an adequate level of stewardship and sort of trusteeship the assets we have. So I would really caution against any sort of reflection that there's some sort of a crisis that has passed. We've got a crisis in front of us. We've got a whole pile of stuff that we're responsible for that we're not maintaining well enough to be saying that we're doing our best. And we're trying to get there, and therein lies much of our debate over the last several months. But there's no, past crisis and it's all golden kind of environment right now. And so to that point, we are still discussing, and certainly some of us are not in agreement on exactly how to get there, but as it relates to the pace at which we try and make progress towards that, I think when Commissioner Jose spoke earlier, and underscored the efforts at stewardship and efforts at maintaining those assets which we have, I think we need to stay that course. I prefer a different route, certainly, to the resources and the revenue. But as it relates to whether or not we should proceed kind of post-haste or at least within this plan, anything we do now just makes the problem grow. We know for a fact we're $2.5 million short. So we can not get it today, and then we'll just have to get it next year. So that, I guess, as it relates to what we do in terms of how much of an increase, whichever vehicle it comes from, I think that the one right now is a reasonable attempt at softening, but would just remind everybody it just delays the challenge. So, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other final questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you. I support what we've done in the budget and thank all those that participated over the years to get us to where we're at. I agree with Commissioner Olson that I too do not support the proposed increase of 6.4. Unfortunately, I will not be here next week due to a work commitment. I would be in support of the 3% increase that we've spoken about. I know that I'm in the minority with this, but with my absence next week, I just wanted it presented in the record this week.
Also want to note that while the fee amount for the stormwater utility is part and parcel to the budget discussion, the actual setting of the fees will occur probably in December when we go through and make implementation items such as other fee adjustments. So it's important to get the right revenue and expenses in the stormwater fund based on that fee, but there will be separate votes taken by the council after the budget's approved on the actual stormwater fee.
So you will be.
Well, that would give us more time to look at additional credits then. Absolutely. For the nonprofits.
Any other final questions or comments? Let me just add, and I'm going to hit on three things. One, the stormwater utility, the community grants question that was asked by Dr. Goodman, and I'm also going to touch upon the library just to make sure that our trustees and director who are in the audience are still awake and paying attention. What's he going to ask? I'll start with the stormwater utility and just pick up where Commissioner Barnett left off, because while we may disagree on the route, we completely agree upon the destination. And it is true that if we're going to be serious about infrastructure, whether it's streets, sidewalks, or stormwater, we know what the costs are, and they only go in one direction, and that's up. And if we're going to actually deliver to this community the infrastructure and then maintain that infrastructure in the manner that we have committed to, then we have to be serious about maintaining a commitment to the sources of funding necessary to get there. It's the typical example of, well, we all want great streets, we want great sidewalks, we want fabulous stormwater, but I don't want to pay for it. We can't do that. If we're going to commit to that kind of infrastructure and then maintain the new infrastructure as well as existing infrastructure, we have to maintain a steadfast, sometimes painful commitment to actually making sure that we deliver at it. And in the past, there have been instances where we've backed off of the gas pedal because of, I think, what was the word, static, or maybe other things. Sometimes we have a great recession. There are good reasons. There are political reasons. There are lots of reasons. But as Commissioner Barnett made very clear, every time you take your foot off the gas pedal, it's going to take you longer to get where you need to go. And so by softening or reducing what the recommendation is to get to the point we need to be in terms of maintaining and adding to our infrastructure, all it means is that we're going to have less of it done in the way it should be according to the plan. Frankly, I would be perfectly fine with the staff recommendation to make the increase in the stormwater utility that which it is proposed, because again, we know what the cost is, we're backing into it. It's not rocket science. Any amount less means the less you do down the road or the longer it takes you to get there. However, I can support and will support the 6.4% this year, fiscal 2014, because we have somewhat of an unusual and unique convergence of circumstances because of some existing bond proceeds and some other circumstances I think allow us to perhaps not go to the full 10% or more this year, but 6.4 can be fine. We'll get our projects done for 2014. We'll be able to do our operations and maintenance the way we need to, but I am also mindful, and will echo comments have been made, that we can't do that every year just because we don't want to, or we think we need to use some other benchmark, otherwise we're never going to reach the maintenance and infrastructure commitment that we've made to this community. We're just cheating the future. And we know what happens in other governmental agencies when you cheat the future. Somebody pays for it big time down the road. Enough said on the stormwater utility. With respect to community grants, I think we should have that conversation, and I'll ask for it right now. The next time we do long-range financial planning, let's ask the question, what are we doing with community grants? The background is very simple, and former Commissioner Schnell will thank me for mentioning this. The Cummings and McNulty report that was done once upon a time recommended that as part of a hotel-motel tax, a portion of it, I believe it was 8%, go to a community grants fund that was to be then distributed by the village to different organizations that would raise cultural and other attractions within our community. The idea being that then people would come and stay in the hotels, dine at the restaurants, and then the whole thing would sort of be self-supportive. That has been successful in varying degrees over the years. Sometimes the community grants drifted off into things that weren't necessarily cultural or that attracted people to stay in hotels, dine in restaurants. During the Great Recession, it was sort of suspended because there was a greater need for the greater good. It's a fair question as to whether we go back to it. And I suppose that in some respects, Dr. Goodman not talking about it is better than the discussion about eliminating it altogether, which we could have that discussion. We haven't had that discussion. I don't think anyone was prepared to have that discussion either, but I do think we need to make a decision about what is the future of that. Are we going to continue to have a Community Grants Commission? Are we going to continue to fund it or not? Because you're right. Right now we still have a Community Grants Commission. It's still in the books, and yet it doesn't do anything because it has no funds. So that is something we ought to discuss next year. And then last but not least, I just wanted to recognize our library director and our library trustees who are in the audience tonight. They are here because, I don't know if most people know this, but the levy discussion that we have includes the levy for the Downers Grove Public Library, which is a very proud institution we have here in town, and obviously is one of the things that makes Downers Grove great. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank our library trustees and director who are in the audience tonight for being here. I'm sure you're thankful that none of the people who were here earlier had any questions about the library levy, but it is passed as part of the village's levy, although it is set by the Library Board of Trustees with the assistance of their director. So welcome and thank you for being here tonight. That's all I have with respect to my comments. And so I think at this point we will adjourn this public hearing. Hang in there because we have another public hearing, and everyone's been very patient, but we'll get to all the items tonight. Second public hearing has to do with a bond issuance for the Downers Grove SLF, or Supportive Living Facility. This public hearing will please now come to order. Public hearing number 2. This public hearing has been called by the Village Council of the Village of Downers Grove to consider the issuance by the Village of Downers Grove Multifamily Housing Revenue Bonds, Series 2013, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $20 million with respect to the 120-unit Supportive Living Multifamily Housing Facility located in the Village of Downers Grove. Notice of this hearing was published in the Downers Grove Suburban Life newspaper on October 16, 2013, and a copy is made part of this record. The procedures for tonight's meeting will be as follows. By now you know them as well as I do. First, there will be a presentation by Jim Snyder, bond counsel for the Village of Downers Grove, who will present information related to the bond issuance. Second, questions or comments will be entertained from members of the Village Council. Third, questions or comments will be entertained from members of the public. These may include either written or oral statements, as well as petitions or other documents or information relevant to the public hearing. Fourth, and finally, we will then adjourn the hearing. Once again, in case you've forgotten, at this hearing, witnesses will not be sworn, and a verbatim written transcript of the statements or testimony given at the hearing will not be prepared. However, a recording of the procedures will be made on village equipment and retained until minutes of the hearing have been prepared and approved by the Village Council. With that, I would invite Mr. Snyder, bond counsel of the Village of Downers Grove, to please come up to the podium and provide us with the information related to the bond issuance. Good evening.
Good evening. I'd be happy to. The purpose of this hearing, it's required by the Internal Revenue Code, because this is a private activity bond. You're not, the Village of Downers Grove is not pledging any revenue, any tax base, any promise. It's going to be paid solely by the promise to pay of the borrower. So this is what's called a conduit bond. The Internal Revenue Code permits a private entity to receive the benefits, the federal tax-exempt benefits of tax-exempt bond financing if a village, such as Downers Grove, issues the bond. There is no liability for Downers Grove on this. It is not a credit. It doesn't go against, it doesn't go against your credit. It doesn't go against any debt limit or anything like that. You are fully indemnified. Been working with the Village Council on that point. We'll make sure that's in the documents so that you're indemnified by the borrower. And this is, you know, a typical conduit bond issue for supportive living facility. It's going to have to meet some low to moderate income requirements. 40% of the units will have to be rented to people who are at 60% of the area income. And with that, any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, initial questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, I just want to thank Mr. Schneider for coming. I know at the last council meeting I had asked a lot of questions, and following the meeting I have a great concern about protecting our newest bond rating, which we worked so hard to get. Our budgets speak to that, everything we do. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us tonight. Thank you.
Good to be here.
Thank you. Other questions or comments at this segment from members of the council? Hearing none, I will then turn and open it up for questions or comments from members of the audience. Bless you. And we have a member of the audience making his way down to the podium as I speak. Welcome back, Mr. Waldeck.
Good evening again. Bill Waldeck, 1409 Willard Place in Downers Grove. It occurred to me during the presentation, what is the technical difference between this type of a bond and seating the bond cap, which I believe there was a limit of $4.5 million approximately?
Well, that's why we have bond counsel here to answer those legal technicalities. I suspect it's a difference between those type of bonds and conduit bonds, but I'll let Mr. Snyder answer the question.
Actually, so in order to do a normal village, you know, water and sewer or road bond issue, you don't need volume cap. You need volume cap for private activity bonds, which this is a type of private activity bond. And the reason the federal government does that, they want to limit how much this is outstanding. So the bond issue is going to be expected to be issued in the amount of about $19 million. The ordinance provides for not to exceed $20 million. We will need volume cap to cover that. Downers Grove did not have enough volume cap to cover that. We've covered it by getting allocations from other municipalities, as you're allowed to under Illinois law. So basically, other municipalities have transferred their volume cap to Downers Grove for this bond issue.
So if I understand that correctly, it's really the same thing, except we got seeding from other municipalities to reach the $20 million mark.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this topic? Hearing none, I'll turn it back to final questions or comments from the members of the Village Council. Commissioner Olson, this is your chance.
None from me, Mayor.
And none from anyone else? Very good. Then I will declare this second public hearing adjourned. Thank you. That brings us to item 7 on our agenda tonight, our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on the consent agenda? Item number 7. Hearing none. Questions or comments from members of the Village Council with respect to any of the items on the consent agenda? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8, our active agenda. We have a number of items on our active agenda tonight. We'll begin with item 8A. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance to rezone property located at 4200 to 4240 Lacey Road from M1 light manufacturing to R2 single-family residence?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Any questions, Commissioner Olson?
None from me.
Then may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. It brings us to item 8B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution to authorize a final plat of subdivision for 4200 to 4240 Lacey Road in the Village of Downers Grove?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments on this item from members of the public? Seeing no one stirring, questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Olson?
None.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the matter passes unanimously as well. Brings us to item 8C as in Charlie. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance to authorize a special use to permit a sheltered care facility for senior citizens at, wait for it, 4200 to 4240 Lacey Road in the Village of Downers Grove?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Olson?
Yeah, Mayor, I know that all these items are related, but I'll comment here because this is the special use to permit a sheltered care facility. I just want to say I am very pleased with what we've been able to do here in bringing a facility that serves our seniors in Downers Grove and bring that facility to the Village of Downers Grove in a way that positively impacts a surrounding neighborhood and really just benefits our community as a whole. I think as everyone's acknowledged, there's a great need for this type of service in both in Downers Grove and in DuPage County in the state of Illinois, and we're able to bring this here to Downers Grove tonight, upon acceptance of the rest of these items, but provided that they are approved, we're able to bring this here in a way that really benefits our entire community. And I just want to thank our staff and for all the work that they did, and to really work with the developer and bring this great project to the village of Downers Grove. So thanks to everybody, and I'm very pleased to support these items.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously as well. It brings us to item 8D as in David. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the Village of Downers Grove, DuPage County, Illinois multifamily housing revenue bonds, Downers Grove SLF, Series 2013, in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $20 million?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Olson?
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously, and the last one in the group is item 8E as in Edward. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution to authorize an agreement with Delta Development of Downers Grove LLC and Downers Grove SLF LLC as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Welcome back, Dr. Goodman.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. I have a question regarding the relationship of this agreement and the village's action to the court order, which has been troublesome for us. And what is that relationship?
As a consequence of this, I'll let the village attorney answer better than I.
As part of this agreement, we will agree, the parties will agree to vacate the consent decree as it relates to this property.
So you've been able to secure cooperation with the other parties in that consent agreement?
Only with respect to the property that the Downers Grove SLF will own. So there will remain a portion that will be subject to the consent decree, owned by a separate party.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Olson?
None.
I will just add one comment that really covers all of these items, and that is sometimes the third time is the charm. I know that it was a long journey, and there were some hurdles to overcome, but I think ultimately it worked out for the best and accomplished what do they say? What's that old phrase? Sometimes the sum is greater than the whole of the parts, or something like that. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's getting late. Something like that. But I think we have an example of that here, where I think at the end of the day it all worked out. And sometimes you don't always get what you want, but if you ask, sometimes you just might get what you need. So we had Rush earlier tonight, and there's the Rolling Stones for you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner
I was trucking.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
I got that.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Matter passed unanimously. Thank you and good luck with the project. That brings us to the end of our active agenda and on to item 9, our first reading or our workshop segment of our agenda, where we entertain items for presentation and discussion only and action at a future date, potentially. As is customary, we turn over this portion of the meeting for presentation of the items to village staff. Village Manager Fieldman.
The first item is to consider a motion estimating the 2013 aggregate tax levy. The levy that's proposed here in the estimate is the same levy that matches the budget document that's been published since late September. Every year we have this presentation. Mr. Baker is ready to make that presentation should the council ask for it. I do want to also note that the special service area number 6, that levy for the Fairview Fire District, is consistent with the discussion we had just a couple of weeks ago. So if there's anybody here in the audience with questions on that, the levy is $82,000, and it is well under the 5% cap that was discussed in detail a few weeks ago. We're happy to answer your questions, and Mike does have the presentation ready, should it be requested.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to the estimated 2013 aggregate tax levy for the Village of Downers Grove, which, as mentioned, does include the Downers Grove Public Library? Any questions from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Olson?
Nothing for me.
And I would just add that this is also sort of part of our ongoing conversation, so the fact that there are any significant comments tonight should not be misinterpreted. This is an ongoing conversation that we've had over a course of a number of different meetings. It's all driven by the budget, which is driven by long-range planning. It's a process that goes throughout the entire year. Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is consideration of an ordinance approving an economic incentive agreement with Art Van Furniture Midwest LLC. Here to present this economic development win is the president of the Economic Development Corporation, Michael Casa.
Good evening, Mr. Casa.
Good evening, Mayor and Village Commissioners. Michael Casa, President of the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, at our new address at 5159 Mokel in Downers Grove.
Congratulations on the move.
Thank you. Mayor Tully and Village Commissioners, I am pleased to present the proposed economic incentive agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and Art Van Furniture Midwest LLC. Art Van Furniture is one of the leading furniture retailers in the Midwest United States. The company was founded in 1959 in Michigan by Art Van Elslander. Today, Art Van has 36 stores and annual revenues of more than $700 million. The company is planning to open 18 new stores in the Chicago area. One of the stores will be located in the Butterfield Corridor trade area. I first met with members of the Art Van team in early 2012 to try to land that store in Downers Grove. Art Van is proposing to purchase and renovate the former Home Depot Expo property at 1021 Butterfield Road and open a new Art Van furniture store. This project includes significant renovation of the interior and exterior. Art Van will incur $3.2 million in extraordinary costs for this redevelopment. Leasing this building has proved difficult. It has been vacant ever since the Home Depot Expo Center closed in April 2009. The size of the building and the fact that most of the retail sales area is on the second floor makes it suitable only for certain types of retail uses, such as furniture stores. Without an incentive agreement, Art Van is not able to absorb the extraordinary costs of the renovation, costs which would not be required for other sites that are available to them. Let me briefly outline the terms of the proposed agreement. The village would rebate an amount equal to 50% of the local sales tax and 50% of the home rule sales tax for revenues generated by the store for 15 years, or until payments total $3.2 million, whichever comes first. The village shall pay to Art Van interest on the unpaid principal balance at a rate of 1.25% per year. The village shall consider the creation of a business improvement district that would permit Art Van to increase their sales tax by an additional 0.5%. The funds would then be rebated to Art Van and applied to the cost of improvements to the property. The agreement includes a provision to hold back an amount equal to 25% of the annual incentive payment to ensure that Art Van operates the store in accordance with the terms of the agreement. And finally, the agreement includes a clawback provision to ensure that Art Van operates the store for at least 20 years. Landing Art Van will be a big win for Downers Grove for several reasons. Let me mention three. One, an important anchor store site in the Butterfield Corridor would be occupied by a premier retailer. Having the space filled would also help the adjacent tenant, PGA Tour Superstore. One of the questions I get from them frequently is, when are we going to get that space filled? Number two, Art Van is projecting $15 million in annual sales, which would generate net sales tax revenues to the village of $150,000 per year, or $2.25 million over 15 years. And three, the redevelopment of this property would have a positive impact on our ability to redevelop the University Plaza Shopping Center. In fact, this project will serve as a catalyst not only for other redevelopment opportunities on Butterfield, but for the attraction of other quality retailers and restaurants. Home Depot's lease does not expire until January 31st, 2022, which means that there is a strong possibility that the building could remain vacant for 8 more years. It has already been vacant for 5 years, and this is an outcome that nobody wants. The Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation strongly supports the proposed economic incentive agreement with Art Van Furniture. A copy of our letter of support has been provided to you. An extra copy was left at each of your seats. I would like to thank the Art Van team for selecting Downers Grove. Several members of their team are with us tonight, and they would be pleased to answer any questions that you may have. I also want to thank the village staff for their hard work and expeditious work on this project, especially Village Manager Dave Fieldman, Village Attorney Enza Petraka, and Community Development Director Tom Dabereiner. One final thought. As you may know, I'm originally from Michigan. Art Van owns the furniture market in the Detroit area. Almost all the furniture I had when I was living in Michigan was from Art Van. That's true for most of my family. I am confident that they will achieve their goal of $250 million in revenues from the Chicago area market. But beyond the new jobs that are going to be created, beyond the sales tax revenues that will be generated, and the positive impact on the Butterfield corridor, there is another benefit. Art Van's reputation in Michigan is that they are a very good corporate citizen and give back to the community, which makes them a good fit for Downers Grove. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Casa. I'll start by asking whether there are any questions from members of the audience with respect to this item. Good evening. You're here for the trifecta tonight.
It's funny how one thing leads to another.
And if we could just have your name and address again, because every hour we have to put it in the record again.
David Maish, 3707 Douglas Road.
Thank you.
My concern, don't know if it's really going to go anywhere, but I will express to the gentlemen who represent Art Van, and you said they're here in the audience. There were some members of Art Van. How you doing, gentlemen? Welcome to Downers Grove.
Thank you.
From what I see, you're going to get a $3.2 million tax break over 15 years. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in that same 15-year period, you will produce a $1.5 million tax to Downers Grove. So by giving Art Van this incentive, we're basically putting $3.2 million in your pocket to help your infrastructure and build a store. My concern is this, to the gentleman at Art Van, that this, to me, seems like a good deal. I hope to see you guys here in Downers Grove, and I would suggest and I hope that you use union labor. The store next door, the PGA Golf Store, was built with non-union labor. That is one of the reasons they are suffering a little bit. The non-union rat was up there for many weeks when that place was going up. I'm here at day one. As you see my extended presence at this meeting, once I get into something, I do get kind of fired up. This is not a threat, gentlemen. I just hope that you patronize union labor, because if it's not patronized, we will make our concerns heard. And like I say, welcome to Downers Grove, and looking forward to working with you folks. That is all.
Well, thank you for your comments, and I'm glad that you both opened and closed your statement with welcome to Downers Grove, because I think that's the point that should be emphasized and heard most loudly. And I think the actual economics of the deal were described by Mr. Casa earlier in his presentation and also reflected in the agenda materials for this item. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to congratulate Michael Casa, because I was one of the few from the council that was able to interview him, and this was one of the companies that he talked about he wanted to bring, because he's a Michiganite. And I congratulate him on that, because it's been a number of years and it's a lot of work, especially in the challenges that that piece of property has brought to not only to the community itself, but to his office. I'm not going to be here next week, as I stated, but I am truly in support of this. And there's 3 bullet points that Mr. Casa had talked about, and I just want to highlight those. that first bullet point talking about paying back the money, the 3.2 million, I really like the fact that if we pay it back sooner than the 15 years, the village itself will benefit with that. So I really like that one. And I'm very pleased to see that the holdback of the 25% of the annual incentive payment is the same one that we use with our car dealers and downers. So that was a great one. But I really like this clawback because I had a conversation with Manager Fieldman earlier about the clawback and where our protection was. For example, if this store were to go out of business in year 16, what does it mean to us after we've done all this for them? Basically what it means is we would get 25% for year 16 to 20 that we actually gave back. So I mean, there's some real good tools in here for the developer to Art Van, but also for the protection of our community. So I truly support this. Congratulations to all that made this happen, and I wish you guys the best of luck. And we will all most likely be at your ribbon cutting. So thank you. That's if it gets voted. I don't have hindsight. I just.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think Mr. Casson wants to weigh in.
I just want to thank Commissioner Durkin for those generous comments. A lot of people made this happen, but thank you very much. If I could indulge the council, some of these folks traveled from Michigan to be here tonight. Could I just ask them to introduce themselves, the Art Van team, if that would be okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a workshop. We're flexible. Good evening and welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Michael Zambricki. I'm General Counsel for Art Van Furniture. With me is Steve Glucksman, our VP of Strategic Development, and also Andrew, our local attorney on the ground here, has really facilitated putting a lot of this together. I'd like to have just a few comments because we've been sitting throughout a lot of meeting that you've had so far.
You sure know our community now.
No hidden fees.
You just met your customer base.
And I'm very impressed with what we've seen so far. Just the way that the proceedings have been handled here, the decorum of everything, the residents who are coming up and speaking, and everybody had something great to say. It was passionate, it was from the heart, and to tell you the truth, I leaned over to Steve and I said, this is our community. This is where we belong. It's very similar to other communities that were very successful in Michigan. As Michael mentioned, we've been in business for 54 years. We started with a single 4,000 square foot store with a guy who didn't have any money at all. And he built it to what it is today because we do it the right way. We do intend on being a member of this community here. Chicago doesn't have a furniture store like Art Van Furniture. Well, it does now. We opened 5 stores within the last 3 months. But what I'm trying to say is that the impact that we've had so far has been to upgrade the way that furniture is sold so far in our neighboring areas where we've popped up stores. All the competitors have been in our stores. They've begun to upgrade all of their stores. For those of you that haven't been in an Art Van store, I welcome you to come visit us because we are a different experience than you will experience anywhere in the Chicago market. That's why we've been so successful here. But in response to the gentleman who did talk about the amount of money that we're requesting, this is a very unusual store for us. Our standard store is a one-story, and for those of you not that familiar with retail, having a single, with the exception of department stores that have different departments on different levels, it's a totally different deal. It's very, very difficult, and there are a lot of costs that are involved with totally revamping the store to get it to work. Our initial reaction to this location when it was first brought to our attention by some real estate agents who we've got working collaboratively with us here is that this store will not work. We can't do it. It just is impossible. It won't work. It's much too large. It's on 2 levels. Those are 2 strikes against it. And when we came back and Andrew did a lot of work collaboratively with Michael, and there were really a 3-party agreement that had to be put together very quickly between the owner of the building, between Home Depot, and us. And the more and more work that we did, the more excited we started to get. We started to do some drawings and talked about the various things that would have to be done. I mean, major, major things. The entire exterior of the building, new entrances, the elevators, the escalators would all have to be relocated. There are a lot of very high costs associated with making this a successful store. But the more and more we worked on all the building plans, the more excited we began to get. So the bottom line is that this is even a different type of store for our Chicago market, but given the size of the store, given the location of the store, given the community that it's in, really made us very, very excited about wanting to be here. The more we talked about it internally, the owner made a trip out here and he said, this is where I want to be. So that's why we were requesting the game plan that we put together here today, because we do want to be a member of this community. We think we can make it work. The $15 million in annual revenue, we believe, is a conservative estimate. The more and more people talk about it, they say this is going to be a $20 million store. And we hope that will be the case. But we really appreciate the collaboration that we've had working together with your community, the speed at which everybody has really helped try to make this happen, because there are some very, very tight time deadlines that have been imposed on us to make this work. As was mentioned, Home Depot has rent out obligations for another 8 years on this property, so the owner said, why should I do anything outside of just leave it empty and collect my rent for the next 8 years? I've been collecting it for the last 5, and that's just fine with us. So I think thinking outside of the box has really worked this deal through. And the more and more we talk about it, the more excited we tend to get. And so we're hoping that you'll see the genius really behind this game plan. We really want to be here. Steve and I are going to go back to our leadership team and say, this is where we want to be. This is our type of community. So we thank you for the introduction, and we invite you to come visit Art Van Furniture. We'd love to be here.
Terrific. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you being here tonight. Other questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Rankin?
I just had a few questions, Michael, if you don't mind. So what are they planning for the access road improvements exactly? Do you know? Or is that just...
The road that serves this property and a couple neighboring properties is actually privately owned, and right now it's in poor condition, has to be patched and resurfaced. And we'll be working with Art Van on their section. Once they take ownership, part of the monies will go to the resurfacing of that. Also, we'll continue our work with the adjacent owners. They have similar issues on their stretch. Ultimately, what we'd like to do is if we can facilitate redevelopment along the entire corridor, we'd like to explore the village taking over that street to make it publicly owned, to just improve access in the area in general.
Okay. And when I was reviewing the agreement, I was interested in these lease agreements that they have with other, or they potentially could have with other businesses. Is this something that the Art Van company does in other municipalities?
Yes, it's basically a store within a store concept. Everything for the home. The other business partners that we have are with Paul's TV, which is a TV retailer. They're taking a look at appliances as well, in addition to television sets. And then we have flooring. It's Art Van World of Floors is also one of our business partners. So they carve out a space, and then they have their own businesses in which they have all of the expertise that we haven't grown. We've been furniture for the last 54 years. So really it's business partners that are in the same general type of product mix.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to add that I think this is a great opportunity for the Village of Downers Grove, and that if we don't take advantage of it, I'm sure one of our neighboring communities would love to swipe it up. So I want to thank Michael and the village staff for working diligently to get this deal done. There are many parts of the story that I think are important. One of the big things to me was that this property's been vacant for so long. The other part that's interesting is the lease agreement that you mentioned that they have with Home Depot. I mean, that's ideal for a landlord to not have to worry about maintaining or doing anything in a building and just getting a check every month. So I do think that if this opportunity is lost, that there may not be another opportunity for some time. So I'd just like to congratulate you and hopefully welcome you to Downers Grove. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Mustat?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, welcome to Downers Grove from your village council. You know, this deal and the tools that are used here by Mr. Casa and our staff have been talked about by this village council and others for a number of years. Our comprehensive plan, our long-range financial plan, all the planning that we do goes into a deal like this. And we do those plans for this particular reason. Many of those plans, all of those plans are discussed in the public forum. But the reason we have the Economic Development Corporation is to help facilitate these kind of game plans, as the Art Van folks have said. This game plan allows us to use some tools that are creative and innovative, out of the box, and it allows to bring in a very, very competitive environment in DuPage County and our neighbors, especially to the east and west, bring in an excellent source of what appears to be pride and ownership of Art Van and then the employees and the staff that are going to be working there. It's going to be a great fit for Downers Grove. To see that building be redeveloped and remodeled, it's a huge victory. It's been identified in every plan that I can remember ever looking at as a horrible site, really. But we have the right tenant now that's going to make it a wonderful site. And this deal is going to kind of reinvigorate Downers Grove, especially in that corridor. And it's going to allow Mr. Casa to kind of hang his hat real high and call in the other brokers and say, listen, look what we've done here. Let's do some more deals and make Downers Grove an even better place for business and our residents and community. So thank you for making the trip from Michigan down here. And we appreciate you guys coming to join us tonight and look forward to your ribbon cutting, hopefully very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. Certainly join my colleagues in welcoming you folks and hoping there's some way to make this work. I had a couple questions about the proposal and also the site itself. One thing is, since we're doing, so in essence, doing the work, I mean, funding it over time, you guys are obviously laying it out on the front end, but getting paid back with the interest component. Is there anything that is anybody's planning on doing relative to the site as it relates to improving green space, improving stormwater management, anything like that? It sounded like most of the stuff was building specific that I heard about. Are we doing anything externally?
The entire site will be transformed. We have an extensive landscape plan. I don't have all the details on what that plan is. Steve, do you know any of the detail? I wish I had some pictures to show you of all of our Art Van stores. Every single one is beautiful. It's very green. The plantings that come out that are seasonal really is very, very unique. I mean, we do it first rate. Everything we do the right way. I wish I had more detail to give you right now on that. Has something been submitted, you know, to the city on the landscape plan too?
Yeah. The site will be improved with more green space, as described by Art Van representatives. Also resurface in the road we just talked about in the parking lot. However, it's important that the amount of impervious area not be expanded because we're working within county stormwater regulations, and so one of the components is to actually leave the amount of impervious area the same or reduce it. And that's what we'll be working with Art Van to facilitate.
I obviously am not in any position to understand what's really required for you guys to successfully operate in terms of parking. But as you just heard with the first 2 hours of discussion, stormwater is a huge problem for us. So anything that can be done to improve that condition, whether it's reduction of the impervious area or it's additional stormwater capacity, anything along those lines is going to be very helpful to our community. And since we're participating in making this investment, I'd hope you guys would consider that, and I'd certainly like to see or hear about anything you might have along those lines.
Thank you. We certainly will take that back.
Michael, you'd mentioned in your note to us the BID, and that, if I'm understanding, that isn't necessarily a part of the deal as it stands today, but is a very real possibility. The effect, if I'm understanding your description right, would be essentially to accelerate the repayment, right?
Say that again, sorry.
It would be to accelerate the repayment it would be accelerating the payoff of the $3.2 million, right?
That actual business improvement district is a requirement under the agreement that we consider it. Under Illinois law, we cannot agree to create it until we go through the process. It is a key element of this agreement, and it does not accelerate the payoff. It's actually a component of the payoff of the $3.2 million expected over a 15-year period.
That was a tightrope. Okay. Well, it's important that we're talking about it appropriately. Then the last thing, I guess I'm curious, just from my colleagues or our staff or you folks, if you've got particular experience, the clawback thing, that sounds great on paper and it makes us all feel good, but I always think you guys want to be successful too, and you have every intention of being successful. And so if we're in a position where we're actually trying to execute on a clawback, something's really gone south. You guys don't exist anymore or you're mad. And so is there any way to bond/insure that kind of a condition? If we're looking at, just to take some ridiculous scenario, you're 12 years out and we're trying to collect 50% of 12 years worth of payouts, that's nonsense. That's not going to happen that way. It looks great on paper, but neither one of us is going to spend the money to chase it like that. Is there any way to insure or bond that?
Yeah, there's two ways we insure or bond for that. And one is the way we structured the deal, that we're actually using incremental dollars generated only by this development without an initial outlay by the Village of Downers Grove. While it's true it's tax dollars technically that are paying for this, there's no out-of-pocket expense for the village. We call that a developer note approach, and it shifts the risk to the store itself. The second way is what Commissioner Durkin was talking about, and he actually introduced those discussions back in 2008 or 2009, and that is we go with the 1 quarter holdback. We hold back 1 quarter of the year's rebate payments so that if there is a clawback situation that's taking place, the first source of money is the money cash on hand we are actually holding. So the combination of no village outlay up front, the quarterly holdback, that's really the last step of that, is if we wanted to pursue any of those provisions that you talked about of going back and seeking additional components of that money, we could do that under this agreement as well.
Yeah, but that doesn't likely add up beyond about 3 or 4 years, right? Your quarter
correct.
holdback in year 6 is suddenly not a lot of money if you're trying to,
That's correct. But a couple of things to remember, because we're not making an initial outlay, it's actually just the incremental dollars. The other thing is that Art Van is actually purchasing this store, and so it makes it less likely that the clawback provision will have to be put in place.
And we've actually had pretty good experience with this in other contexts where it's worked beyond just on paper. It's actually worked out where we've ended up well ahead of the game.
Tell me about some of those offline, would you?
Just if I can make one comment.
One that's no longer there that it worked pretty well with.
To follow up on what Manager Fieldman said, this is a substantial investment that Art Van is making in the property. Rather than just being a tenant, they're actually purchasing the property and then making significant enhancements to it as a long-range investment in Downers Grove. Again, less likely that we would need to use the clawback because they're actually investing in their own property as opposed to a tenant where the lease runs out and then they would depart when their lease is over. Here they own the property.
That's all I've got, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to welcome Art Van to Downers Grove. I think this is a big win for the village, a big win for the EDC. Mayor Tully has said in the past that there's no EDC easy button, no economic development easy button. And so I know there's a lot of hard work and time and effort that went into it, both from Mr. Casa, from village staff, and from the folks at Art Van. So thank you all for that. I think it's great to see some redevelopment on this site, and I hope it does spur additional redevelopment. I think the economic incentive package makes complete sense in order to make sure that it is Downers Grove that is the home for Art Van in the western suburbs. The reality is that there are higher costs, and that it would have been easy for you to find another site, but we want you here, and we're glad that you're coming. And like Michael, I actually grew up in Michigan as well, and I had a home full of Art Van furniture growing up too. So I know the company, and I know that it is a good corporate citizen, as Michael said. So once again, welcome, and thanks for being here tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Just to follow up,
Commissioner Durkin?
I'm on your website, and I see distribution centers. Have we talked to them about a Illinois distribution center?
Maybe
If
we
not,
should walk
Michael
before we run.
I think we just started that conversation.
Hey, we got lead counsel here.
That's right.
They're bringing the gospel back to them, you know?
Commissioner Olson, any questions?
No questions from me. I just want to emphasize one point. I know there's concern from members of the public, and you know, those present tonight also, members of the public who have expressed concern to me about the use of economic incentive agreements, you know, and people have said, oh, well, you know, we're giving away so much here that you know, we're rebating the sales tax, and we're rebating, you know, creating another tax and then rebating it to them, and so, you know, we're giving them all this extra money. And you know, one of the things I just want to note is, well, on this site, and as has been stated before, if the site, if we didn't do this, then it's likely the site would remain vacant and the village would receive no dollars, no sales tax dollars, versus the sales tax dollars we are going to receive if this deal is approved. And second, I would note that I think that it's important that our community realize that in a community like Downers Grove, which is almost completely built out, we are going to have to use creative and innovative and unique ways to spur redevelopment in our community. Unfortunately, unlike communities like Naperville or Bolingbrook or others in our area, we don't have a great amount of vacant land that we can sell. Well, you know, we encourage you to come and come on this land, and it's a farm now, and you can just put up you know, your store and you'll be good. Well, now we have existing stores that may need to be demolished or renovated, as in this case. And you know, I think it's important that we have an agreement that one brings in a new and exciting retailer to the community, but also understand that we are not giving any upfront payment. This is effectively no financial risk to the village. This is only benefit to the village. If Art Van comes in and, you know, and unfortunately doesn't make it within a couple of years, well, the village hasn't given them any money. We have only we haven't given them money up front or lost investment. We're only giving money along the way, and I think that's a very important feature of this agreement. So I just want to thank Michael Casa, the village staff that worked to draft this agreement, and representatives from Art Van. It's really very, very important to me that we do encourage redevelopment of sites in Downers Grove to attract, in this case, create something from nothing. But even in sites where we may have something, to create something that's much better. And I hope that the staff and the Economic Development Corporation and will continue to look for opportunities where investments may need to be made by the village through creative measures like this one, but that ultimately have a positive impact both on the village's bottom line. Let's also remember that Art Van coming to Downers Grove has a positive impact on our community. It creates additional value to additional options for the residents of Downers Grove to shop. It takes a site that is an eyesore and improves it to, you know, a well-functioning site. It improves, you know, all the externalities for the properties around it. So I just want to say that I'm very pleased by this result, and I really hope that we can see more of these opportunities where we may need to be a bit creative and we may need to create some incentives and additional incentives for redevelopment, but we really would like to see redevelopment in our community. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. I will just add, obviously, I think this is a terrific accomplishment to be able to pull all these pieces together in the short amount of time, and it's really a tribute to the ability of village staff and the EDC to work together and be those facilitators and not regulators, and when you need to figure out how to get to yes. This is a story to me about opportunities versus choices, and the opportunities for this site have never been very good. So we have to be careful when people, to pick up on Commissioner Olson's comments, people say, well, why are we doing all these incentive agreements? And in the more than, I hate to say this, in the more than decade that I've served this village as elected official, I've seen a lot of incentive agreements. And why do we do them? It's because there's an old saying, 50% of something beats the pants off of 100% of nothing. And right now that site is nothing but a big challenge. It has a locational challenge, as a physical, I don't want to talk you out of this, by the way. As a physical challenge. Motion to adjourn. And, well, nothing hasn't already been said, and there are circumstances. So there weren't a lot of opportunities for this location, and it wasn't generating anything. So to come up with a plan where we have a high-quality business come into the space, and it generates a net positive for our community is a good outcome. And I also want to, I said it's also about choices. Obviously, Art Van is a terrific company. You have many choices of where you could locate, and as Commissioner Rankin said, we have lots of neighbors who would love to have you in their communities. So we thank you for choosing Downers Grove. And obviously, as you've seen, embrace you with open arms. So it's about opportunities, about choices. But not every incentive agreement makes sense. And I do think we pride ourselves on making sure that incentive agreements make sense. And this one clearly does. We've gotten much, much better about these over the course of time, in the sense that really the incentive is coming only from the increment. And what that means is if Art Van doesn't generate new sales tax revenue to the village, we don't pay anything. So there's really absolutely zero risk to the village from this. And so when numbers like $3.2 million get thrown around, people think, oh my goodness, they're writing a check for $3.2 million to some company. Not the case. They get paid with the dollars they generate. They don't generate them, there's nothing there to pay them with. We're the net winners on this. It's a very nice outcome. The clawback to me is just icing on the cake. And that's really not so much about getting back the incremental payouts, because if they don't generate it, they don't get it. So that's our protection on that. The clawback's really something that comes from a different era where we had, shall we say, conduct issues with certain businesses, and the holdback allowed us to work a little more fiercely with that. I don't expect that we'll have any of those issues in this environment, but it's just an added protection. So this is a great opportunity. We thank you for your choice, choosing Downers Grove. And I think this is an incentive agreement that makes a ton of sense. And again, also want to add my voice to those of my colleagues in thanking everyone who brought it for us today. And thank you for your trip down here. Safe travels, and welcome to Downers Grove.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners.
And now, given that it's almost 10 o'clock, it's time to talk about medical marijuana.
That's correct. There's no further introduction. Here's Tom Daberiner to introduce an ordinance amending provisions concerning medical cannabis.
Thanks. Thanks to the state of Illinois, we get to talk about that.
I also have Art Van furniture in my house.
He's not just a community development director, he's also a client.
That's right. I don't have this in my house, so we're going to talk about let's see, his ordinance has been, let me just jump right into this. An ordinance has been prepared to adopt municipal code amendments to list medical cannabis cultivation centers and dispensing organizations as allowable special uses in the M1 light manufacturing district, and to amend section 15.25 of the municipal code to exempt any person from arrest or prosecution who is engaging in any conduct in accordance with the Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Pilot Program Act. And the memo here emphasizes, and I want to emphasize, that
This is an ordinance that further restricts the places in Downers Grove where dispensing and cultivation centers could possibly be located. It is something that further restricts those locations. And we're looking for approval on the November 12th, 2013 active agenda. The state of Illinois passed a law in August of this year that approved the use of medical cannabis beginning January 1st of next year. The law does several things. First of all, prohibits us from prohibiting this, from opposing this legislation. It establishes distance requirements, separation requirements from certain land uses for locating these places. It allows additional reasonable local zoning restrictions to be put in place, and we're going to talk about some of these in a minute. And then it exempts persons from arrest, as I indicated, in prosecution for activities that are now legal under the new law, and that affects Section 15.25. State law separation requirements really amount to this. The cultivation centers must be located more than 2,500 feet from pre-existing schools, daycare uses, residentially zoned land, and this effectively eliminates any location in the village of Downers Grove. There can be a maximum of 22 in the state, one per state police district, but really nothing under the current law that could exist in Downers Grove. With regard to dispensing centers, those must be located more than 1,000 feet from pre-existing schools and daycare uses. They also cannot be located within a residentially zoned district, nor can they be located in a physician's office. And there would be a maximum of 60 of these spread evenly across the state. On October 7th, last month, the Village of Downers Grove Plan Commission met and considered this legislation and considered some changes that would help to make this more restrictive in the Village of Downers Grove. And they voted to restrict these locations to the M1 district, the light manufacturing district, as a special use only for both the dispensary centers and the cultivation centers. And we're keeping the cultivation center under this designation because you never know if the law is going to change in the future. We want to make sure that we're covered here. And then secondly, they added an additional restriction that was deemed reasonable, and that was an important part of the law. It was deemed reasonable for this additional restriction of a 1,000-foot separation requirement from public parks. And that was really a request of our partners with the Park District in all of this, and it was considered favorably by the Plan Commission. When you take all of these things into consideration, we're left really with just two areas in the community. These are outlined in red here.
Over on Bonnie Bray.
South side item, yeah.
Nothing on the south side. I'll vouch for that. In the M1 area here, and then and that was in Ellsworth Business Park. And then north of Ogden and Warrenville Road, there are a couple small areas located here. Those are really the two areas that we're limiting this to. As I mentioned, the Plan Commission met on October 7th. They found that the proposed text amendment and the separation distance from public parks was appropriate, and they recommended approval of the amendment unanimously. Staff concurs. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Dave Reiner. Any questions from the audience with respect to medical cannabis? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Tom LaCrone, 545 Chicago Avenue. I just have one question. Is there anything in this new law, state law, that allows cannabis to be used after they receive it from the defense? I mean, do we want somebody smoking pot in town and then driving around?
I'm going to have our police chief answer that question.
Yeah,
That's a good plan.
I knew this was going to happen.
Thanks for staying.
Good evening, Chief Porter.
Good evening. There's a number of circumstances where the use of the medical marijuana is prohibited. Driving a vehicle, obviously, utilizing it in a vehicle, government places. So there's really the bill or the law itself is pretty extensive as far as the prohibited locations.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, I do have a question. Can I ask one?
Commissioner Durkin has a question for you, Chief, if you don't mind.
Is public use allowed? I mean, outside use, like public, you can't drink in public type thing? Is there similar?
Yes, there are similar
usage of
provisions.
marijuana?
Correct.
So really, you can only do it in your home or your residence?
Correct. Areas where where smoking is prohibited, obviously, you cannot smoke marijuana at those places, but predominantly in your residence, if you qualify under the medical marijuana card.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the audience? Questions from the village council about this item? Commissioner Rankin?
I was just thinking about some of the uses that happen in the M1 districts, and, there's some recreational uses like bounce houses and gymnastics centers, and I know that the Downers Grove Ice Arena, I think, is in that area, as well as the Premier Gymnastics. So I'd like us to maybe consider making an exception, or, grouping this, like recreation facilities should be grouped along with parks and schools. I don't know if anyone else supports that, but.
Was that something that came up in the discussions at either the staff or the plan commission level?
I think we touched on it when we were discussing the public parks and park district facilities type uses and the proximity issue then. And we really kind of ruled out what would be considered, I guess, private recreational centers, simply because those are a little bit more difficult to pin down as opposed to a public park, for example. And
We can take a look, though, at what that would mean and if it would change the maps that you were presented with earlier today.
It could be deemed an unreasonable restriction only because it could eliminate any area in Downers Grove in
Because
which they could
theoretically, one of
locate.
those could pop up anywhere.
Exactly.
Well, I guess I'm thinking of the classification of the reason behind the school and the parks is the same reason that this would apply, so.
So we'll get you some information on how that would affect it and whether we think it's reasonable or allowed under the law.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the council? I just want to thank both Mr. Dave Reiner as well as Chief Porter, because I know the police have been...
Mayor Tully?
Sorry, Commissioner Olson, go ahead.
Thank you, thanks.
I figured it was, you're on East Coast time, I figured you were already asleep.
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm still here. I just want to ask a question. Are we at all concerned with the current restriction? I mean, the amount of land area that's open to this is very low in the village of Downers Grove, which personally I think is very appropriate, and I would support what Commissioner Rankin just proposed in looking into the recreational facilities. But my only worry is if would both what we currently have and possibly if the private recreational facilities are included, is there concern that this would be considered, that even the current proposal could be considered unreasonable by the state? And how would such a determination be made, whether it was reasonable or unreasonable? I assume that's through litigation, but...
That is usually how that would be determined, especially with the new law, and that's why we're analyzing this with our zoning approach that we use in other similar situations. We think what's proposed here obviously is reasonable within the limits of the law. The Plan Commission concurred. I think there's several uses that are restricted in a similar way, and when you read the state law and how it applies not only to Downers Grove but throughout, we think this is absolutely consistent within the law.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I do want to emphasize that I know this was characterized in the newspaper as Downers Grove paving the way for medical marijuana. Well, that's in fact false, and we are being as restrictive as we can within the confines of state law on this issue. And whether you agree or disagree with state law, I think it's important that these facilities be kept far away from kids and schools and parks and things like that. And so that's why I support looking at what Commissioner Rankin said and being as restrictive as possible within the law is the approach that I'd like to take, and I appreciate the staff and Plan Commission seemingly taking that approach as well. So thank you, Mayor. That's all the comments I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sorry, I skipped you. I even had a witty comment to kick it off to you, and I completely forgot about it. My mistake. I'll go back to what I was saying. I just want to thank village planning staff and also the police department, because I know you're dealing both with the issues of medical marijuana and also concealed carry, struggling with that right now. And the law changes, we have to adapt, and so we do. But thank you for all your extra work on that. Very good. That brings us to the last item on our workshop agenda tonight, which is 9D as in David. Go ahead, Tom.
This is a case where a special use has been prepared to permit the expansion of an automobile repair shop at 815 Ogden Avenue, and we're looking for approval on the November 12th active agenda. So the petitioner is requesting approval of a special use to expand an existing Meineke automobile repair shop at this location. Let me just provide an aerial view. It's outlined in yellow is the property that we're talking about. The property is zoned B3, General Services and Highway Business, which is an appropriate district for this kind of use. The proposed use is permitted as a special use in this district. The petitioner is proposing to expand the existing building, as I said, which is just over 1,900 square feet today. That is about how the building lays out today. And let's zoom in a little bit. There is the property aligned north-south with Ogden Avenue running left to right across the north side of that picture. Kind of a long rectangular building here. The yellow shows the location of the existing building. The blue that I've just added shows what would be added. That is, would bring the total square footage of the structure to almost 2,900 square feet. In addition to that, the site would see more landscaping, especially in the front, and then that stretch along the side. We would achieve compliance with the sign ordinance here and change a pole sign to a monument sign. A rear fence would be replaced. It's in bad shape right now, and that will be taken care of as part of this process. And then that back area, which isn't neatly paved, will become a paved surface. So there are significant improvements being made to this site. The proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan because it does recognize, the comprehensive plan does recognize Ogden Avenue as an auto-oriented corridor. It also calls for the addition of green space, something that will occur here, and that enhances the appeal of the corridor. The Plan Commission considered this petition at their October 7th, 2013 meeting. And found that the request met the standards in Section 28.1902 of the zoning ordinance for approval of a special use. They recommended approval, again unanimously. Staff concurs. Be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. David Reiner. Any questions from the audience with respect to the proposed special use? Questions or comments in the village council?
I was
Commissioner
gonna,
Newstead.
I was gonna have one, but as often happens when I have a question of our staff, it's already in the presentation. I was looking at Google images of the sign, and I see that a compliant sign is part of the deal, so thank you for that clarification.
Commissioner Olson?
Nothing from me.
No other questions?
That
Thank
is
you
our
very
first
much.
reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, and that brings to a close our workshop agenda. That brings us to item 10, the mayor's report. And I do have one somber item that I want to mention and share with the community. And that is, it was brought to my attention actually by Wally Brown, who was here earlier tonight. Wally Brown, former Forest Preserve District member, former county board member, and for those who remember, former village council member who actually served with Frank Houck, who was once the mayor of Downers Grove. Sadly, former Mayor Houck passed away at the age of 97 back in September. And just want to share a couple of things. In Buffalo, Missouri, where he retired. He graduated from Nokomis High School in 1932 and from the University of Illinois in 1940 with a Bachelor of Science Mechanical Engineering degree. He entered the United States Army in December of 1941, and during his tour of duty attended the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Harvard University to study and eventually teach World War II's new military usage of something newfangled called radar. He also served a tour of duty in the Philippine Islands. Following his military service, Frank Houck worked briefly for Commonwealth Edison in Chicago. In 1947, he joined the University of Illinois in Chicago as superintendent of utilities for multiple campuses, and finalized his career there in 1979 as the director of physical plant for all University of Illinois at Chicago campuses. He was very involved in civic and community service. He was appointed and then elected to the office of Commissioner of Streets and Improvements. We don't have that department anymore. In Downers Grove, and subsequently was elected mayor of Downers Grove for 2 4-year terms. And if you've ever visited Village Hall and been to the front door, there's a bronze plaque when this building was dedicated in the 60s, and the plaque shows the council at that time and also reflects Mayor Houck as the mayor of Downers Grove at that time. So he will always be remembered by the plaque that is on this building, and if we ever get Village Hall rebuilt, we're moving that plaque. We're going to keep it. Where was I here? I'm sorry. He was also very active in the Boy and Explorer Scouts and in the First Presbyterian Church of Downers Grove, where he served as an elder. And as I mentioned, went on to retire in Buffalo, Missouri, and continued his civic and community service there. As I mentioned, passed away at the young age of 97 after living a rather impressive and amazing life. So our best wishes and prayers go out to the Houck family. Just wanted to point out that one of our former leaders of this organization, Mayor Frank Houck, ex-former Mayor Frank Houck, recently passed away last month. That's all I have for my report. It brings us to item 12, Attorney's Report.
No report. Oh, sorry.
I do have a...
Madam Attorney, Enzo Petrarca.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3
You
items.
can tell it's late.
I have an ordinance amending provisions concerning medical cannabis, an ordinance authorizing a special use to permit the expansion of an automobile repair shop at 815 Ogden Avenue, and an ordinance approving an economic incentive agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and Art Van Furniture. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
That's all.
And I was the one that jumped ahead. Item 11, Manager's Report.
I still have no report.
You sure? That brings us to item 13, Council Member New Business. Do any members of the Village Council have any items of new business that they would like to share with the rest of us? Any items of new business? Commissioner Olson, any items of new business?
None from me. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, terrific. Well, I want to thank everyone in the audience for their patience and staying for the balance of the evening. At this point in time, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.